We can do it together. Let's learn together right now. Like, why not?
I don't need to learn together.
It's super interesting that we're learning more about. I like that we're learning about.
I knew all of this. I'm not learning anything.
I'm trying to learn stuff, and I feel like you're like you just want to like own me really hard.
You're making stupid arguments. All right, we're gonna leave, if you don't mind, just in case it kicks off here, we're gonna leave that up on the screen.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, just to be clear, while I'm here, I condemn the violence. I think the violence plays into Trump's hand. I don't support it. It's not good.
Well, wait. You condemn the violence because it plays into Trump's hand?
I condemn the violence and it plays into Trump's hand.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. Cool. That's perfectly reasonable. It's something I try to say all the time, that you condemn shit like this morally, but also if you can't convince people of morality, can you convince them strategically, right? Because not everyone gives a shit. So if you could be like, look, man, you're actually hurting yourself by doing this as well, not just a moral condemnation. Anyways, okay. Someone asked, we're at 183% of our goal. Thank you. All right. So you say my claim one, which was, quote, Hillary and DNC team colluded with suspected Russian spy Igor Dashchenko to get dirt on Trump to prove he got dirt from Russians. You're saying that's inaccurate?
Yes, I would say so. Two parts that are inaccurate. Mm-hmm. So when you say that he is a alleged Russian spy, even at the time that this happened, this was years after he'd been exonerated and was never actually indicted for being a Russian spy. Do you
prove it? Show me the evidence that he was exonerated. Go ahead.
Sure. Or do you agree he was never indicted?
I do agree with that. There's no evidence he was exonerated.
While I pull this up, the second part would be that when you say Hillary's team colluded with him, do you agree that Hillary's team never had any direct contact with Igor?
We're not sure. So there's evidence that there are claims that they did directly work together, but it doesn't matter, right? This term is still true. If you collude with someone through an intermediary and know that that was the person that you were working with that was getting the dirt, then yes, I still think that we would say that that's colluding with them. Like, for example,
so you would also, so to be clear, then you would also agree that when the chair of Trump's campaign, Paul Manafort, was illegally, like I said, illegally working with with pro-Russian Ukrainians with that foreign bank account and stuff. I don't know all the exact details of that, but I know that he was charged for failing to register as a foreign agent, right? And it was because of contact with them, right?
But that was like from 2013. From before when Trump was running for office, before he was Trump's campaign manager. Now, there was claims about false statements circa 2017, I think, between him and Klemenich about the work that they had previously done. But there were no charges whatsoever, nor was there any evidence that there was colluding to affect the election, to get dirt on Hillary or anything of that nature. The only thing that they suggested was that Paul Manafort had previously worked with Conceding Klemenich and the Podesta group, Hillary Clinton's campaign managers group. He had worked with them in order to lobby for Ukrainians such as Yanukovych that were considered pro-Russian. And then years later, once Manafort was campaign manager, he went to Conceding Klemenich and was like, check out this polling data. I think Trump may win. That's it.
Okay. So just because you might be right about, so you're saying that during the election, there was no illegal, like his failure to register as a foreign agent had nothing to do with the 2016 campaign. Is that what you're saying?
I don't believe that he was specifically charged with failing to register as a foreign agent for communications with Klemenich in 2016. I could be wrong, but I don't think that's the case. I think that it was because the Mueller report talks specifically about Group A and Group B. This came out at first, right? Group A was a Republican lobbying firm called Mercury LLC. Group B was the Podesta group. But before that was sort of made available who those groups were, it said that Manafort and Conceding Klemenich colluded with Group A, or worked with Group A and Group B to lobby without registering for a foreign agent, in this case Yanukovych and other politicians in Ukraine that were considered pro-Russian. Can you explain why the FBI would charge Paul Manafort for that, but not the Podesta group? Why they were allowed to retroactively sign paperwork?
I'm not going to speak on I don't know enough about the Podesta group thing specifically.
Right. Well,
what I know is that Igor Dashchenko at that point was not suspected of being a Russian spy, right?
That's not true. To who?
By anybody. Like the FBI there was never an indictment or anything. There was an investigation that started and never came to anything, right?
That's not true.
2009, you said?
It's absurd. So there's an investigation. There's an investigation in this guy for being a suspected Russian spy. You agree with that?
In 2009, yes.
Okay, was he ever exonerated?
He was never even indicted, so I don't think he needs to be exonerated.
But the investigation...
I apologize, I used that word earlier, yeah.
Did the investigation find evidence that he, in fact, was not a Russian spy?
I think that the evidence that they had, or the evidence that led them initially to that conclusion, like, was found to be not
I would love to see that evidence.
Yeah, here I just pulled up.
I would love to say, you just said not substantiated, because my understanding from reading it was what happened was they were starting their investigation and then Dushenko left the United States. So they just said, okay, it's not actionable at this point. But up to that point, they had not found proof to indict him. So he was being investigated as a potential Russian spy, and the investigation closed because it was sort of inactionable. At the point of that, they were like, yeah, we don't have proof to indict him right now as he's leaving, so they let him go. Then he ends up working for Hillary Clinton's team in the DNC through the intermediary of Christopher Steele. It is completely within bounds to say this guy was a suspected Russian spy. You'll admit at one point he was, correct?
Yeah, and I would say if it turns out that there was good reason to stop that investigation, which I'm my understanding is there was, but if I could be wrong about that, right? So if there was, then you would agree that after that it would be kind of at least unsubstantiated to call him a suspected Russian spy after that.
No, I don't think it would be unsubstantiated to call him that. He was once a suspected Russian spy, and unless
is it once a suspected Russian spy, always a suspected Russian spy?
Unless there was a closure of the case in the sense that we've looked at this evidence and found it to be untrue. We found evidence that he's not a suspected Russian spy. I think it would be perfectly reasonable to say that he was a suspected Russian spy. He's a Russian national, correct? Actually, I don't know about that. He was. I
think so, but yeah, I'm not sure.
Let me double check.
So to be clear, like when I dug into all this, like this was like a half a week ago or so, or maybe a week ago at this point, and I did like a lot of the stuff I didn't know all the specific details of before, and so I'm like. I'm also going off the top of like my initial reading into all these things. And these are the specific claims that I feel very confident about. Those are the things I want to fight on. I don't want to try to speculate about stuff I don't know.
But I mean, I just want to be clear that your quibble with my first statement is it's not that Hillary's team colluded with a guy that was a Russian national that at one point was suspected of being a Russian spy. It's just, well, I don't think that they suspected him in 2016. That's it. That's your quibble.
It's two-part. It's one that they when you say they colluded, that implies like direct contact. I
disagree.
And you don't have. Okay, I feel like it does. But,
okay, so
we can agree to disagree.
So just to be clear on that, if Donald Trump's team had paid a law firm that then met with Konstantin Clement, or it then met with Vladimir Putin, right? And Vladimir Putin personally gave this law firm that Trump hired evidence of Hillary, emails that they had. And then that law firm went to Donald Trump and said, here, Vladimir Putin personally gave me this. And Trump said, oh, boy, great, let's release it to the press. You would say it would be outrageous and heinous to say that Trump colluded with Vladimir Putin to get evidence to smear Hillary Clinton.
Not outrageous, but if there were so I'll say one key difference. So my understanding, and I could be wrong about this, is my understanding of the Hillary hired, Hillary's team hired Fusion, who hired Steele, who then used Danchenko as a source. So we're multiple degrees of separation.
It doesn't matter. They knew when they got the information, they knew that it was a Russian, right?
I don't know. I don't know about
that.
Yes. They knew that source when they got the information, they knew it came from Danchenko specifically.
Before we got Danchenko's name, he was the primary subsource, and I believe the information that we were told about him was that like he was a Russian with connections to Russian intel. And Russian government sources.
Ultimately, I feel like it's a stretch to call that Hillary's team colluding with a Russian spy, or even
it's outrageous. It's outrageous that you would say that. It's
outrageous.
Yes.
You really think so? You don't think that like there's a few parts of that kind of like feel weaker than
not at all.
No?
I think that that's a far stronger connection to Hillary's team colluding with Russia than anything Trump did. Anything.
Really?
Yes. What did Trump do that was colluding with Russia?
I would say the Paul Manafort stuff is worse.
Okay, so what did Manafort do? Go for it again.
Just failure to register as a foreign agent working with pro-Russian Ukrainians alone.
So in
I think that one was worse.
2013, he worked with Hillary Clinton's campaign managers group with this guy, Konstantin Klimenik, who is a Ukrainian, who worked with the U.S. State Department as a credible intel source. And that to you, oh, by the way, look, shit's kicking off there. Looks like they lit something on fire there.
Is that's the same dumpster that's been circling around, right?
I don't know. I didn't see that one unless that one's been on fire for a
maybe
damn
not.
long
Maybe
time.
there's multiple. I don't know.
So now it's a riot again? Just curious.
I mean, whoever's doing that is rioting, yeah. But like,
Okay.
my issue is conflating like the people who are not rioting, who are absolutely not lighting fires and stuff, like calling them rioters. I find that to be unfair.
Did you make that same claim about January 6th? Was January 6th an insurrection?
Yeah, I would say, yeah, I think it was, but not everyone there was an insurrectionist.
Okay, what's your definition of insurrection?
I like the 4-part one we've talked about.
Okay,
Yeah.
so is this an insurrection?
There might be people there who are engaging in insurrection, but I wouldn't call the entire event
Now
an
that's
insurrection.
different. When we said January 6th, you said, yes, it's an insurrection, but some people weren't behaving.
Well,
and then when
the reason I say that is
here,
because, yeah.
you switch it
I can
around,
explain.
right?
No,
So
well, what I imagine there might be several instances even across LA of people engaging in insurrection.
So
but it could be as little as 2 people. Even.
Okay, right. So there are either an insurrection that you would say in totality is this, or there are several insurrections. That's your argument?
Potentially, yeah, there could be.
Okay. Do you think that Section 3 of the 14th Amendment that suggests that a government official that engages with an insurrection, right, should not be allowed to hold federal office? Do you agree with that?
Yeah. So if any of the people who turn out to be engaging in insurrection, I'm fine with the 14th Amendment applying to them. Yeah.
Define engaging in an insurrection.
Like if they are part of the assemblage, like they are directly trying to use violence or threat of violence in order to stop ICE from executing the law. I think that that would be those people would be engaging in insurrection. I think.
Did Trump engage in an insurrection?
Yes. Yeah. Basically. Yeah.
So he was actually of the assemblage directing people to use violence, is what you said.
I think Trump fully intended on people going and using threat of violence at least to stop the peaceful transfer of power.
What's your proof of that?
Well, I mean, all of the organization stuff regarding the electors, the Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers, the mass amount of stockpile of weapons across the river that the Oath Keepers had.
Okay, if we find out, right, that Joe Biden actually had an alternate elector scheme to her, Kamala Harris, did she engage in an insurrection?
That wouldn't necessarily meet the violent. So the electors part feeds into what they were trying to do that day, right?
So what you're saying
they centered their insurrection around that.
So what you're saying is you could do alternate electors without the intent of violence whatsoever.
You could.
Okay, so what's your proof? So that was step one. So you say because alternate electors, that proves that Trump intended violence. That's nonsense.
No, I say it's part of it.
Okay,
the electors are important because that was part of Trump's plan to delay the certification, right?
That's outrageous. That doesn't mean that he intended any sort of violence. There is no evidence that he suggested or intended any sort of violence from any communications through the FBI or the January 6th committee whatsoever. The other argument you had was
when he tweeted "Stay peaceful" about was it 2 hours in when they were like breaking down Nancy Pelosi's door and taking a shit in her office. Would you say that when he said "stay peaceful" at that point, do you think that that's like a good faith thing? Like he understood that he thought they were being peaceful. He didn't know. He didn't see that in the news. When
the police yesterday in this riot put out a statement that said it was peaceful, and when Gavin Newsom was saying things, did they too engage in an insurrection then?
So I think that what Gavin Newsom said was no violence, period, like explicitly, like he wasn't even saying like, no,
that's irrelevant. If he said don't do violence, what would be relevant? You said what Trump said that made it engagement of an insurrection was he said stay peaceful, implying that he was saying that the actions that were occurring were in fact peaceful. So then what I'm saying to you is if I can provide you evidence of Democratic politicians, Karen Bass, Gavin Newsom, people in the police, etc., that said after, what's today's date? The 9th, so the 6th, that said after the 6th it was peaceful, that said after the 7th it was peaceful, then you would say, well, clearly it wasn't peaceful. So them saying it is peaceful is them dog whistling to engage in an insurrection. That would be your argument?
Say that if he said stay peaceful while there were people like actively engaging in violence and he wasn't condemning that violence specifically, like Trump wasn't, then I would absolutely, I would say that's not.
I think you're full of shit. So just to be clear, if he said it's peaceful and there was any act of violence that was occurring at the time where he said it was peaceful, then he's engaged in insurrection, Gavin Newsom.
Well, if there was violence going on that wasn't being addressed, first of all, and there's violence that he's not speaking to, he's not like Trump was not speaking to the violence, right? You agree that Trump was not addressing the violence by that point. He was saying stay peaceful while they were breaking in to Nancy Pelosi's door, right after they broke down her door, actually.
What's the time frame for when he said stay peaceful? Like, I just want to go. I don't know. So your argument is this is incredible. You're saying that the claim staying peaceful is in effect dog whistling to yuck. I know you're engaged in violence and I didn't say it was violence and therefore I'm encouraging the violence by saying stay peaceful.
When he had every opportunity to condemn the violence, I would say so.
I would say I disagree. And I would say that you have no substantive reason why that wouldn't apply to Gavin Newsom, Karen Bass, or any Democrat today. If they're saying that it is peaceful while it's not peaceful, then that would mean that they are engaging in violence based on the same rationale.
Why didn't Trump condemn the violence until at all, for hours and hours and hours until what was
why didn't Gavin Newsom? Why didn't that? How many
he
Democrats
did multiple times?
Okay, well, what time? Give me the first time that Gavin Newsom condemned the violence here. Go ahead.
Sure. Gavin Newsom tweet. Oh, it's pull up his X account.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're gonna see. You should see a bunch of tweets that say condemning violence. We'll see. I've read a few of these earlier today. He talks about Trump inflaming, which I agree. And I don't agree with Gavin Newsom on everything, but we are certainly aligned on this. Okay, so here he is saying June 7th.
The first one I saw was June 7th at 10:22. He says the federal government is taking over the California National Guard and deploying 2,000 soldiers in Los Angeles, not because there's a shortage of law enforcement, but because they don't want a spectacle. Don't give them one. Never use violence. Speak out peacefully. Yep. Okay, true. So that's like an entire day after the violence started.
June 7th. Isn't that the day the violence started?
No, it started on the 6th. Today's the 9th, right? So there was violence for 3 days. You acknowledge that, right?
There were violent incidents spread across 3 days, yeah.
Okay, so that means it starts on the 6th, 7th, 8th. Now we're in day 4 if you count being in the AM.
So when he says never, do you think Trump's stay peaceful while they're in the Capitol not being peaceful, is that comparable to him saying never use violence, or comparable to Gavin Newsom saying never use violence?
It's just a term it's just a colloquial. He's not saying
they were
that
in the Capitol, Rob. They were in the Capitol. They were busting down Nancy Pelosi's door.
I don't give a shit.
You should. You should care about that.
No, I don't give a shit that means saying stay peaceful means that he's calling for violence. It's absurd. It's absolutely absurd.
Okay. That's just one thing that I think what I'm pointing to is that Trump was not telling people to stop until way later in the day.
Okay. That doesn't mean he engaged in fact, the court is very clear that non-action is not the same as action and engaging.
Well, Trump, I mean, ultimately, like Trump was in charge of the National Guard and everything. Like he could have.
That's. So do
whatever.
You think
he could have put a stop to it? Those people were all there on his behalf, right? They were there for Trump. Those people were supporting Trump. If Trump had tweeted leave earlier on, do you think they would have left?
No.
But how come when he tweeted leave that they finally did?
What time did he tweet leave?
Let's see. When was You're very special people and whatever. You're all very special. Go home. What was that? When was that tweet? Go home. We love you. You're very special. I mean, come on. First of all, like you agree that's ridiculous, right? For Trump to say I know your pain. I know you're hurt. We had an election that was stolen from us. It was a landslide election. Everyone knows it, especially the other side. Like, okay, you agree that stuff's ridiculous, right?
I think saying it's a landslide's ridiculous. It probably was stolen. He has the right to say it. Certainly was stolen, if not from stealing ballots, but because there was a collusion effort by the intel agencies to lie about the most significant story weeks before the election in the Hunter Biden laptop, which I assume you have no problem with.
Wait, no problem with what specifically about the Hunter Biden laptop?
That it was covered up by 51 former intel agents, and it was set up by the FBI and CISA communicating beforehand with social media companies that there was going to be a story breaking about the Biden family in Ukraine that would have all the hallmarks of Russian disinformation, which then caused those platforms to not only censor the story, but then gave a talking point that because it was censored, the American people didn't believe it. Polling suggested that as many as 1 out of every 3 Democrats would have changed their votes if they believed that story.
I would love to see that. That's super interesting. I'd love to see that polling, but because my understanding of the censoring of that story is that only the New York Post article specifically, which I think had the pictures of his dick in it, which, credit to Hunter Biden for having a huge cock, but like that's the only thing that was banned.
I get it, Radical. I'm not surprised.
I'm just being glib. I'm sorry. I'm being silly.
I'm not surprised you're interested in dicks. Seems to fix your character. Good for you. That's not.
Well,
why
first of all, it's okay to be gay, but I'm not. Yeah, just for the record.
So I just want to be clear.
I'm pro-gay, but I'm not gay.
Your argument is that the New York Post published in their paper literally uncensored pictures of Hunter Biden's genitals. And that's why it was censored.
My understanding is that's part of why the New York Post article specifically was censored for like 24 hours on most websites. But then I don't believe that.
I think you're full of shit. I don't think that the America's oldest newspaper has ever once posted uncensored pictures of someone's genitals. I don't believe you.
New York Post would be, America's oldest tabloid newspaper, but yeah, sure.
I mean, you say that, but again, you're a fucking fan of the mainstream media. It's more tabloid-ish than anything that you'd ever see from the New York Post.
I think New York Post is more tabloid.
Okay, give me examples of their tabloid stories. Go for it.
Well, I mean, we can just go through their Did
they win Pulitzers for the fake Russia collusion story?
They might have. I don't know.
So you don't even know if the New York Post ran Russia collusion stories and second won a Pulitzer. You have no clue.
Well, I'm not saying they didn't run them. I'm sure they ran them. Yeah, I just don't know. I didn't know if they won a Pulitzer for them.
Okay.
But anyway, we're going way off. Like you're finding stuff that I don't have specifics on to trap. Like, stop moving me off of the things. I want to speak on stuff I'm confident about. I don't want to speculate.
Intel Wild $5 says Monday through Friday Newsom, Monday through Friday Crockett. Oh, motherfucker. Yeah. The Monday through Friday.
Monday through Friday. Oh, yeah. Monday through Friday Newsom. Monday through Friday Crockett. I agree. Yeah. Monday through Sunday. Hell yeah.
So again, we go back to the Russian collusion stuff real quick if you want, but there's not much more to say on it. I mean, your quibbles of it seem nonsensical. And my central point, it still stands, which is if it was true that Democrats were concerned about collusion with Russia, why were they so concerned? What was the fear? What did they think Trump, what was the accusation that Trump was doing? Foreign influence, right?
I think the concern was that Vladimir Putin would have preferred Trump to get into office.
Well, okay, even if that's not the case.
I think it is.
So I just want to be clear. The entire story was we're concerned that Putin wants Trump to win. That's the story.
Well, that Russian disinformation was assisting Trump.
Right. That's the story, that they were afraid that Trump was getting disinformation to help him win. Correct?
Sort of. Yeah.
Because it's not a story. For example, if we said, "Holy shit, North Korea wanted Kamala to win," you wouldn't be like, "Oh, okay, that's a big FBI investigation we need to have into Kamala Harrison." You'd say, "Who gives a shit?"
Well, if the chair of her campaign had history of working with foreign agents that were pro South Korea or whatever, then it might be.
First off,
unregistered
with Hillary's campaign manager. Did Hillary? By the way, Hillary's campaign manager was working right. Let me. I don't know if I should have that on screen. Sorry. There was just someone showing a wound. Helps. I didn't want to. I don't know what TLS was that. Nonetheless, right? So Hillary's team, first off, there's evidence. I'm not going to get into it tonight, but there's evidence that actually the 17 intel agencies that said that Putin wanted Trump to win, it's actually all came from the CIA. And there are people within the CIA that said actually they had evidence that Putin didn't care who won or slightly preferred Hillary because he found her predictable. But nonetheless, when it comes to connections to Russia, clearly Hillary Clinton had far more significant shady connections to Russia than Trump. Not just through Igor Dushenko.
But that's okay. No. I'm not sure that's true, but I know what I do know is that when you say her team colluded with Igor Dushenko, I feel like that alone is a a shaky premise.
Okay, I'll just say real quick. Bill Clinton personally met with Vladimir Putin during the Uranium One thing. And then after he personally met with Putin, 2 weeks later, he was paid $500,000 by a Russian state-owned bank. And then Hillary's department signed off on selling 20% of our uranium to Ukraine, or I'm sorry, Russia. That seems
none
to
of
be
that has to
far
do
more
with Danchenko, right? None of that has anything to do with
That's
Danchenko?
true. When it comes specifically to Danchenko, the reason I asked you, well, what's the big issue, right? The big issue is we didn't want Trump working with Russia to get dirt in his opponent to swing the election, correct?
We didn't want Trump. Well, I'm not sure I care about getting dirt, like if they, because it's perfectly normal for campaigns to do oppositional research on their opponents. As long as it's through legal channels, I don't have a problem with that at all.
Okay, so then it would be we didn't want Trump working to get disinformation from Russia?
Illegally, at least. Yeah.
Okay, show me the evidence that Trump's team illegally got disinformation from Russia. Go ahead.
Is there nothing about that in the Mueller report?
Look it up. No one was charged with anything similar to that.
We can dig into that, but I want to be clear. The first thing that I'm asserting is that your claim that Hillary's team colluded with Igor Danchenko. I'm saying that's and that Danchenko was a suspected Russian spy at the time. I'm saying that combination of things is very, very shaky.
He was a suspected Russian spy, which was what I said. Show me, if you want to get real technical about it.
I do actually want to get very technical about it.
My statement was, do you agree? Hillary and DNC colluded with suspected Russian spy. Show me where I said at the time, suspected at the time. Is it true that he was a suspected Russian spy?
Wait, don't.
Excuse me. Yes or no?
Wait, Rob.
No,
Rob.
radical.
I think it's implied by your statement. I do. I think it's implied by your statement.
You want to get very technical. You just said you want to get very technical.
I do.
So if I said if Igor Danchenko dies, and I say Igor Danchenko was a suspected Russian spy, right? Would you say?
I think your statement.
Would you say he's not at the time?
Let's stay on your real statement, okay?
Mm-hmm.
When you say that Hillary Clinton's team colluded with a suspected Russian spy, that sounds like at the time of the alleged collusion, he was a suspected Russian spy.
You could say it sounds like that, but that's not.
I would say technically that's like the structure of the sentence.
That's not what it literally says. So if you want to be an asshole and be like, well, we're just talking about hyper literally, that's not what it literally says. You lose. Nonetheless, if we're going to look at it in the spirit of what it was saying, one, he was still a suspected Russian spy in that he was suspected by the FBI and was never exonerated, and the investigation stopped because he left the country.
Or indicted.
And second, right, that would be when I say that they dropped the investigation would be, I think it's implied that he wasn't indicted. And secondly, the reason that this would matter was the entire crux is I was saying that the DNC didn't care about Russia collusion because the fear was Trump's working with Russians to get dirt that's disinformation to affect the election. He never did that. They never got dirt. They never used it, right? However, Hillary's team did get dirt from a Russian that was disinformation that they used to help affect the election. And there was never a call for investigation.
Do you think that Hillary's team's contact with Igor Danchenko was through illegal channels?
No.
Do you think it was through secret channels?
Neither was Trump. Well, yeah, it was secret.
Okay,
Did you know about it at the time?
Well, I mean, personally, no, I didn't.
Right.
But you say it's secret.
Was secret.
It was they were hired through. It was all done through like legal channels, right? Then
no,
I don't know if I call it secret.
Technically not. If you
like
actually
what?
want to get technical. Well, for example, the FEC fined her because they did not properly disclose that the payments through Fusion GPS were for campaign research. So they actually got fined because they didn't write down that was, and for a year, they denied paying for the Steele dossier.
And you're saying that because of that, it's collusion?
Well, no, I'm saying I'm saying that collusion has nothing to do with illegality. It has nothing to do.
Well, when I look up the word collusion, like definition of collusion is secret or illegal cooperation.
Okay, it was secret. It was secret. You just said
secret as in private or secret as in like because I mean
it was secret as in
I'll
private.
give you technically secret.
It was secret as in private, and they denied it once it was made public for a year. They said, no, we didn't do that. Steele was working on his own. We didn't have anything to do with it. They lied, right? Now, the point that I'm trying to make is I don't think that what I arguably don't think what, in fact, not even arguably, I don't think what Hillary's team did was a crime. Neither was Trump. You're allowed to go to Russians to get dirt, You should be allowed to go to British people to get dirt. We might not like it, but I think you should be allowed. The problem is, why did the Democrats say, the fact that we suspect that Trump's trying to get dirt on Hillary from Russians, that could be disinformation that could swing the election. And then we found out, guess what Hillary's team did? They got dirt on Trump through an intermediary from Russians that was disinformation that was given to the FBI that the FBI then used to illegally spy on Trump's team.
So I think the key difference, and I'm shaky on all the I'm not you know all these details more than I do, so I'm shaky on them. I could be wrong about some of this. My understanding is that the part that we'd be concerned about is it not going through legal channels. So if Hillary Clinton's team went through legal channels to get this information, say they hired Fusion, who hired Steele, who then used Donchenko as a source. If that process was legal, I don't care. I'm okay with it.
I need you to provide me evidence that Paul Manafort was charged with colluding with foreign actors to get dirt on Hillary Clinton.
Let me see. Let me pull up the specific charges regarding Paul Manafort. I don't. Again, that wasn't. But I guess to make it analogous, I can see what you're saying there. But would you agree at least if by your standard that Hillary's team colluded, then it's at least looks very similar with Paul Manafort?
No, it's not even close.
Not even close. You're saying it's way worse for Hillary.
Yes, one actively got disinformation from a Russian national. Then you knew it was from a Russian national, used that disinformation to try to prove that Trump's team was working with Russians to get dirt on Hillary. They sent that to the FBI. The FBI then used it without verifying it and actually hired the Russian national, who they previously suspected of being a spy. They used that information to, in part, get at least 2 illegal FISA warrants to spy on Trump's team. What was it that Trump's team did? Paul Manafort talked to a Ukrainian who is alleged to be pro-Russian and gave him campaign data.
What were his foreign bank accounts regarding? Weren't they regarding these specific contacts?
But in what regards? I have no idea what you're talking about with foreign bank accounts. There was a Ukraine.
Well, there are four of the charges were regarding unregistered foreign bank accounts.
Right, and this had to do with sort of work that was going on with Klimanik, the Podesta Group, Mercury LLC, back in 2012, 2013. Unless I'm missing something. But I don't understand anyways, even if there were foreign bank accounts with Klimanik, what does that have to do with getting dirt against Hillary Clinton? There's never been an allegation that I'm aware of. The only allegation was he worked with Klimanik in the past, working with Yanukovych. So did the Podesta Group, which was Hillary's campaign manager. They decided to charge Manafort, but not the Podesta Group, anyone at the Podesta Group. And then secondly, he went to Klimanik again in 2017 and was like, hey, I got polling data that suggests we may win. Now, the reason he was doing that's not because Manafort's a good guy. It's because Manafort was trying to work his old business contacts to be like, hey, man, I might be an influential guy here soon. I think we're going to fucking win this thing. It's not a crime.
All right, there's a lot of stuff there that I just don't know about, so I'm not going to speak to.
Okay, well then.
But I will again. I want to back up. I want to back up and speak to the one claim that I came on here to defend, which is that your claim, your specific point, saying that Hillary's team colluded with Donchenko and who was a suspected Russian spy. I think alone that implies that he was a suspected Russian spy at the time. You can deny that. You can deny you meant that, but I think any reasonable person would understand that that's what the implication of your statement is. And you can deny that all you want. I think that's very clear, but you clearly think otherwise. I think that alone is shaky.
It's not shaky. It's not shaky. And again,
it's shaky. And in fact, I would say it's misinformation.
You can keep filibustering. He was a suspected Russian spy. He was never exonerated, right? He left the country, which is why the investigation stopped, right? And he clearly was a Russian. He clearly, gave disinformation that resulted in the spying on Trump. And despite all of that, the central point that I'm making is that there was this guy who was once accused of being a Russian spy, who Hillary's team went through, who got disinformation. That's the exact accusation that they had against Donald Trump. The entire reason for the investigation into Donald Trump. And the point that I'm making here is Democrats never actually gave a shit about working with Russians to get disinformation against your opponent because they demanded investigations into Trump and said it was the biggest story in the world for 3 years. And all the while, they knew at least for 2 years.
How is this not filibustering? Okay.
Well,
There's so much there. There's so much.
What's that?
Yeah. Okay.
Do you disagree with that?
That's what I'm saying. It's so I can't even follow it. I'm
step by
crazy, dude.
one.
I'm neurospicy. You gotta be simpler for me.
All right, one by one. Ready?
Yeah.
The accusation that was serious was Trump's team colluded with Russians to get dirt on Hillary.
Sure.
Okay, you agree.
I think so.
Next.
No, well, Trump's team colluded with Russians illegally. Trump's team worked illegally with Russians or with Russian actors, with Russian actors.
Okay. Let's do several things on this.
Which I still think is true.
Okay, one. Why was it illegal?
Because he failed to register.
So you have to register as a foreign lobbyist if you're getting dirt in your opponent.
From a foreign actor, yes.
Okay. Can you provide any evidence that that's the case? Because lobbying for someone means you're doing something for their behest, not that they're giving you stuff.
I don't know if I can cite a specific statute or whatever right now, but I'll put a pin in that. We can come back to it next time we talk. I believe that to be the case. I think we should come back to that specific claim in the future. But
fine, let's do it this way then. What was the law firm that Hillary's team went through to get dirt on Trump?
Are you talking about the law firm or is Fusion?
Fusion GPS,
okay.
right? Yeah. Perkins Coin, Fusion GPS. Who was the head of Fusion GPS?
I don't know.
Glenn Simpson. Was he registered under FARA?
Are you saying that he was working with?
I'm saying that the guy that was at the head that was communicated directly with Christopher Steele was named Glenn Simpson. Was he registered under FARA?
Dude, I don't know. I told you. I want to defend the stuff I know. I don't know. I don't even know Glenn Simpson. I'm first hearing this name. Don't try to be like, well, you don't know about this, and you can't say anything about that. Like, don't do that to me, please.
You're saying shit that you don't know, and what you're saying is forcing me to prove that you're full of shit by citing other
I don't
things.
I don't think you're proving it. I think you're asserting it, but
of course I am. Yeah. You said, oh, the problem is that he got everything that Manafort did would have been legal if and there wouldn't have been any claims that Democrats would have been upset about colluding with Russia if Manafort just was registered under FARA. That's it. That was the whole
argument. Necessarily. At least registering as a foreign agent, that those charges regarding the foreign bank accounts, I think those would not have been relevant while he was campaign chair. Those would not have been relevant if he had gone through the legal channels. Yeah.
So then you admit that your argument has nothing to do with the central point that we were making.
Wait, how do you
The central point was never, but what about these FARA charges against Manafort? The central point that I was making was, I'll repeat it, that and you agreed to it. The argument was that Democrats were furious because Trump was colluding with Russians to get dirt on Hillary. And you said, well, the only reason was because he didn't register under FARA. That's your argument.
Well, to be fair, we're just focusing on Paul Manafort. I'm saying that's one. There were tons of other charges, right, regarding the Mueller report and stuff. Like, there were a lot of other people. Collusion. I mean, we can just pull up the Mueller investigation charges, right, and like who was the indictments and.
Okay, name the one that was for Russia collusion. Go for it.
I don't know if any of them were that was the charge. That's like a statute.
Name any that had to do with
Russia.
getting disinformation from Russians.
But why do you keep pigeonholing into these specific it would be any sort of collusion, right? Any sort of illegally working with them would be.
Give me any evidence that occurred.
Okay. Actually, you know what? I'll put a pin. I'll say if we can come again. So let's do these pins. We can come I'll clip these out and I'll find these specific claims that I don't know the answer to, and we can dig into them. So I don't want to do research right here.
Okay, so a couple ththings real
quick.
I
promise I will. I came back. Didn't I? Right.
Listen, 3 things real quick. One, what if you're hypothetically wrong that you don't have to register as a FARA to talk to a country to get dirt? Then you'll admit that you're wrong on that Manafort part?
Yeah. I would be. Okay. I would say that specific claim about Manafort might not hold, but there could be other stuff regarding Manafort. I'm pretty sure there's other
Number
stuff.
two,
because he on a bunch of indictments. So.
Number 2, if Glenn Simpson at Fusion GPS was the one being the intermediary between Hillary's team and Glenn Simpson and Igor Dushenko, and he's not registered as FARA, that would meet the same criticism that you have of Paul Manafort.
Can you say that full thing again?
Yes. If Glenn Simpson from Fusion GPS was the intermediary between Hillary Clinton and any foreigner to get dirt, whether it be Christopher Steele or Igor Dashchenko, and he was not registered under FARA, that would meet the same criticism you have with Manafort.
If there wasn't some other legal channel they went through, yes, I would say so, yeah.
What do you mean some other legal channel?
Like, basically, I'm saying if it was illegal, if what they were doing was illegal, then yes.
But wait, that's begging the question, right?
No, it's not. How's that begging the question?
So, okay, so I just want to be clear here. So then your argument
how's
is...
how's it begging the question?
Because you're saying if it's illegal to talk to a foreigner, right, then yes, it would be illegal.
No, I'm saying I would condemn it. Like, I would have an issue with it. If they committed crimes to do it, I would say I have issues with that.
Okay, so just to be clear, if there was no crimes, if there was, name me the illegal crime that had to do with Russia collusion. You're condemning,
there was a bunch of crimes that had to do with Trump's campaign and regarding pro-Russian actors.
Okay, that's different. Right? For example, if one of those crimes was Trump got drunk and got a DUI with a Russian guy, that would be a crime with a pro-Russian actor that has nothing to do with Russia collusion, correct?
But I think that the stuff in the Mueller report is not about Trump getting drunk and riding.
And you're saying you are condemning Trump's team for that, correct?
For the things that, I would say so, yeah.
So then give me an example of the crime with Russia collusion involving the 2016 election.
Maybe there weren't any. Let's say there's none. Let's say there's none. Yeah, I'll assume there's none. I think there are. I think there's plenty. I think there's actually plenty, and we can go through them. But I don't have them to recite, so I'm not gonna try.
But you've made the declaration. No. I'm condemning Trump for this. So surely you have some sort of idea.
My understanding of the Mueller investigation is that they found there were quite a few indictments and many guilty pleas regarding Russian interference with the election. Yes.
Like what? Who?
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that's my understanding. I could be wrong. Maybe I'm wrong about that. That's my understanding. And if that's true, I would condemn Trump for that. And I think you should too, right?
Wait. If you're wrong, you should condemn Trump?
If I'm right, then I would condemn Trump.
If you're right, I was going to say, what the fuck would you condemn him if you're wrong? No,
I would condemn him if I'm wrong. I wouldn't. If I'm wrong, I wouldn't condemn him for that. If I'm right, then I would condemn him. If I'm right about that, if I'm right about those indictments being related to Russian collusion, then I think it's right, and that's my feeling. That's my understanding. Again, but I don't have the specifics to recite. So I'm saying if that's true, if my understanding is correct, then he should be condemned, right?
Okay,
and you would condemn him too, right? Would you also condemn him?
No.
Why not? Why not?
Because one, there's no proof that he did anything. Second, that wouldn't be proof that just because the corrupt FBI went after him, it wouldn't be proof of anything that it's worth condemnability, right? And my entire argument is that the Democrats and the FBI are corrupt and that they were going after Trump for the very things they knew Hillary was. And your big evidence as to why that's not the case is, but they charged Trump's team and not Hillary's.
My big evidence is no. I'm saying that the evidence, there's less evidence of your claim, and yes, the fact that they did charge helps. But if you're saying that it doesn't prove your point that they're corrupt. And I'm sorry, hang on, yeah.
I'm listening. I'm sorry. The dog was trying to get in.
Yeah,
I just shut the door.
I feel like it doesn't prove corruption for them not to have charged Hillary unless you really strongly demonstrate that the same things were happening.
Well, of course they were happening. The same things were happening. And again, the difference is going to be this.
A lot of that's
the difference was going to be this. The initial investment, what you're doing is doing post hoc justification, which is what the FBI did. They said, show me the person, we'll find the crime, right? So most of the crimes that they found were shit like this. George Papadopoulos lied about some dates. He wasn't charged with anything with Russian collusion, right? And Michael Flynn lied about whether or not he had a conversation with Kislyak. Had nothing to do with colluding with Russians. He was perfectly allowed to do that. He was charged with allegedly lying. And Paul Manafort, most of his charges stem from failing to register as a foreign agent or lying about it. And most of those actions were like 2013, etc., when he was working with the Podesta group in order to lobby for Yanukovych, who was a Ukrainian president at the time that was considered pro-Russian. But I'm unaware of anyone in the Trump campaign that faced any charge whatsoever regarding them working with Russians to influence the 2016 election. The closest that you would come was Manafort talking to this dude, Conceding Klemenich. Klemenich, by the way, if you'd like me to read some evidence for you, Klemenich was, let's see. Shit, I'm on the wrong thing
evidence
here.
Regarding what? What are you going to pull up?
That Conceding Klemenich worked hand in hand with the Obama State Department all the time.
Say it again.
That Klemennik, this Ukrainian that you're saying was pro-Russian, right, worked hand in hand with the Obama State Department all the time.
Okay. Through legal channels or illegally?
Well, what's it matter? If he's a Russian...
Because if they do it legally, then it's not breaking the law, right?
But again, the question isn't, is it legal or illegal? Did they?
No, it is for me.
No, okay, let me ask you this.
Because real quick, the reason, can I explain why? Because if my whole point is that, or to argue against your FBI corruption thing, like if the FBI is not charging because laws weren't broken, that's not the same as them not charging because they're biased for Hillary Clinton, right?
We're not talking about charging. We're talking about investigations. How would they bring a charge if they don't even investigate?
There were no investigations.
Why did they investigate Trump and not Hillary's team?
I don't know. They didn't investigate anything about Hillary's team.
So show me the investigations they had into Hillary's team.
I'm saying I don't know. I'm not saying they did. I'm not asserting they did. I'm saying I don't know.
Okay, so if there were none,
tell me they didn't. I don't know.
So we know, for example, that there was Crossfire Hurricane was a big investigation into Trump, right?
I don't know. Yeah.
Okay. That was the name of the big. Simultaneously, there was an FBI investigation into Hillary that was called the Mid-Year Exam. But that wasn't about Russia. That was about the mishandling of her private server.
Sure.
I've never seen any evidence to suggest that there was an open FBI case file on Hillary's team colluding with Russians. Have you ever seen any evidence to that effect?
About Trump's team colluding with Russians?
No, that there was an investigation into Hillary's team.
I'm sorry. Look, I'm flustered here. I feel like we've jumped all over the place, like from so many different things. But what I've been asserting from the beginning is that you're first of all, your claim that Donchenko was a suspected Russian spy. I feel like that's misinformation alone because you're implying he was a suspected Russian spy during the time that Hillary's team allegedly colluded with him. I don't think you could substantiate the collusion or him being a suspected Russian spy at that time. That was the main thing. You can say we already covered it. That was what I came up here to talk about. We've moved 100 different directions. That's the main thing I've wanted to talk about over and over, and I feel like I've made that case.
You already admitted that technically my language is correct, that he was a suspected Russian spy.
I would say that you're playing with words in a kind of dishonest way.
Technically, is the words that I've written correct?
I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think they've been substantiated by what we've talked about here or anything we've showed. Obviously, we haven't showed me anything that substantiates them.
He was never a suspected Russian spy?
I didn't say that.
Okay, then
he was not. But to be clear, when Hillary's team allegedly colluded with him, which I think is also shaky, he was not at that time a suspected Russian spy.
By who? I suspected him.
You suspected it. Okay,
yeah.
So he was suspected by you. Not
okay,
so when you say that. So that, just to be clear, what you're saying is in that statement, what you're saying is that he was suspected by Rob. Rob suspected him of being a Russian spy.
I'm saying that there are many people that suspected him even at the time. I think even many people in the FBI would have as well, because he was suspected in 2009 or 11 or whenever it was back then. The investigation was closed because he left. So it's fair to say because the investigation stopped that the suspicion would remain. Because they suspected him.
I don't know if I'm skeptical of that claim. That's why the investigation stopped.
But nonetheless, if you're only interested in technically are my words individually correct, then all I would have to prove is that anyone suspected him of being a Russian spy. Now, your argument's going to be, let me finish. Your argument's going to be, that's ridiculous. And I'm like, right, to look at this in a just purely technical semantic way is ridiculous, but if that's the game you want to play, then yes, I'm technically right. However, if you look at the spirit of what I'm saying, this dude was a suspected Russian spy. The entire criticism that I'm making is Hillary's team and the Democrats were like, holy shit, Trump tried to get dirt on Hillary from Russians, and there's no evidence that he ever got dirt. Right? But Hillary's team did try to get dirt on Trump from Russians. They got that dirt. It was disinformation, and it was used to affect the election and to smear Trump afterwards, including getting 2 illegal FISA warrants. That proves that the Democrats never gave a shit about colluding with Russians. They did not care. They know that Hillary's team did it, and they're perfectly fine with it. And your argument to that is, well,
my argument is that I don't believe that you have evidence that Hillary's team colluded with Igor, number one, or that at the time that they were quote unquote colluding, he was a suspected Russian spy. Those are my 2 claims. That's the 2 things that I came here asserting out the gate. Those are the main things that I've held my ground on, and I don't think that you've proven me wrong. I certainly haven't read anything that proves me wrong on that. I think that I am Yeah, I stand by those.
You're not wrong. You've just conceded that you're right. If anyone suspected him of being a Russian spy, that I'm technically correct.
No, I at the time
so
he was
just-
not
just
suspected
be
by
clear-
the FBI or anybody
Where is
who
my-
relevant.
wait,
Yeah,
where's
if you
wait,
meant
wait,
Rob
wait,
suspected
please,
him, then sure,
please.
I'll accept that Rob suspected. But
Please,
that's certainly
please.
not the implication of those words.
Where does
Absolutely
it say?
not.
Here's what it wrote: Hillary and DNC colluded with suspected Russian spy Igor Dushenko to get dirt on Trump to prove he got dirt from Russians. Where does it say suspected by the FBI, suspected by Hillary's team, suspected by? Where does it say any of that?
I think it's very clear that you don't mean by Rob.
I don't think it's clear. I think that what you're doing.
I know you don't. I know you. Well, it can't be clear because otherwise, like, my point is stronger right here, right?
No, your point's not strong. Your point's bullshit. You're trying to argue a stupid
I don't think
semantic
so.
argument. Well, yes, he was
No.
a suspected Russian spy, but because the investigation closed and they didn't charge him, no one suspected him in 2016.
I think it's
Bullshit.
very clear. I think anybody reasonable could hear that statement and would think that you mean at the time that this alleged collusion was happening, which I think is, again, I think that part's also shaky, that this alleged collusion was happening. It's your statement implies he was at that time suspected by like the FBI or something, or some sort of government agent, some sort of government organization. He was suspected of being a Russian spy. Like, there was good reason to suspect that at that time he was a Russian spy. That Hillary Clinton's team should have assumed at that time he was a Russian spy. That's what it sounds like you're saying.
I agree. Not technically, right? I agree in the spirit of what you're saying. Not that they should have assumed that he was a suspected Russian spy, that they knew he was once suspected and they would have no evidence to the contrary. Would you agree with that? Do you think Hillary's team knew that at one point?
Wait.
Do you think Hillary's team knew at one point this dude was suspected of being, there was an active investigation of him of being a Russian spy?
Sure, and I think they knew the investigation ended. I think they also knew the investigation ended. Yeah.
Okay, it ended, but that didn't exonerate him, as you admit.
He was never indicted. So wouldn't he have to be indicted to require exoneration?
No.
Isn't that what?
Wait, what?
Maybe not.
I'm
not a fucking lawyer. Okay.
Would you just be quiet and listen to me?
Oh, exoneration occurs when the conviction for a crime is reversed. So yeah, he would have to be convicted and then exonerated.
No, I don't know where you're reading.
Not just indicted, but convicted.
I don't know where you're reading that. Okay. Well, then he was never. I used exonerate to mean this, to mean he was proven to be innocent. But let's use your definition. That's better for me. Good. He was never exonerated. Great.
He was never convicted.
Right.
Okay, so he doesn't have to be exonerated. So, but he was never indicted.
Okay, so
he was suspected, and then he was no longer suspected after those investigations ended.
So was O.J. Simpson exonerated?
Exoneration specifically? I guess so. Maybe.
Okay, let's say that that's what you want to use. So then, if I am working with O.J. Simpson,
I think we're focused too much on the word exoneration because I think I used that. It's my bad. I introduced that word, but I shouldn't have. I think that what I should have said.
I'm trying to make is they knew that this guy was suspected of being a Russian spy, right?
Yes, and that investigation ended. Yes.
Okay, it ended, but that doesn't mean that they were like, oh, the investigation ended, so we know he's not a Russian spy.
The investigation never, and it never followed with indictments. There was never any substantiation of that. Yeah.
Okay, I will repeat then, since I have to. You're going to take it to this ridiculous place. So if I do something shady with O.J. Simpson before he died, right? And you said Rob worked with suspected killer O.J. Simpson, I would say that is outrageous. He's not a suspected killer.
I think he was. He was definitely indicted for the killing, right?
It doesn't matter. He was exonerated. He was found not guilty.
Yeah.
He was found not guilty. So your argument is if someone's indicted, even if they're found not guilty, you can keep saying they're suspected. That's your argument?
I still think, I mean, I think that's where the technicality would come. I don't know if I would call OJ suspected at that point. I would say that, like, I don't know if that's the word I'd use, but that's a weird one because we all know for a fact that, like, we think we know that, like, OJ probably killed that guy, but I don't think you have as much evidence that Donchenko was a Russian.
You're right. I don't. But what I'm saying is, right, like, if I fucking, by the way, this was the whole spiel with Carter Page. It's the same argument in the reverse. The whole thing with Carter Page was like, oh boy, he previously had some shady legal dealings, right? And now he's talking with Russians, so. But the problem was those shady illegal dealings he had prior were actually, he got caught up in working with these Russians, and then basically the fucking CIA came to him and was like, hey man, these fucking dudes you're working with are Russian mobsters. And he was like, oh shit. And he's sort of a puss, Carter Page. So he's like, yeah, whatever, I'll work with you. That's what Carter Page did, right? But he was suspected at one point, right? The point I'm trying to, and that was good enough for the FBI, for Hillary's team and all them to say, oh, Trump's working with a suspected Russian dude, this guy Carter Page. That same logic would apply here, except unlike Carter Page, who actively worked with the CIA to take down Russians, Dushenko never did. Dushenko had an active investigation. He left the country, so they're like, okay, we don't have enough evidence to charge him, so we're going to stop the investigation.
That part, I don't know if I believe that is why the investigation ended.
Okay. Nonetheless, if you're Hillary's team and you're concerned about Russians, that's the whole point. And we know that's what. Why would you work with this dude that was at least suspected of being a Russian spy?
Wait, let's see.
Unless you had some sort of definitive proof. In fact, to the contrary.
Yeah, this is an AI summary, so take it with a grain of salt.
Sure, that's fair. I get.
Yeah, the FBI's investigation into Igor Danchenko was closed in March 2011 after the FBI mistakenly believed he had fled the country. Later, Danchenko was acquitted of lying to the FBI in 2022.
It was after. So, okay. So he was acquitted in 2022, but that was acquitted of lying, not of being a Russian spy. And nonetheless, there was no acquittal or summary of evidence. They thought he left, so they closed it. That's what your AI summary just said, right?
I suppose.
Okay, so that's the point of trigger. All I'm saying is it is completely fair to say that Hillary's team was working with this dude that was a suspected Russian spy. The heart of what I'm getting at there is they're accusing Trump of trying to work with Russians, and so they go to a guy who's a foreign spy himself, and Christopher Steele, and have him work with someone that they
wait. So you're saying Steele is also a foreign spy?
Yeah, he's for MI6 or something. He worked for the UK.
Like so they were illegally working with Steele as well?
No, I didn't say that. He was literally, though, a spy from UK. I'm not even saying they illegally worked with Dushenko. I'm not making the claim of illegality.
I feel like the collusion implies illegal also, but because that's like the whole thing with
collusion.
Stuff,
collusion could apply. All I mean by collusion, and what most people, when they said Trump was colluding with Russia, right? There is no crime that's collusion. What they were saying was he's fucking got these back channels, like these underhanded channels where he's trying to get dirt on Hillary. That's what they meant.
Well, again,
that's
like,
exactly
collusion,
what Hillary's team did.
Collusion usually refers to secret or unlawful way, like right. So,
was Hillary's team publicly out there saying, "Oh, we got information from this guy that was at one point his name's Igor Dushenko, and at one point he was under investigation for being a Russian spy, and we think he has connections to Russian politicians and Russian intel." Can you show me when Hillary's team said that as they were getting this dirt? They never said it. They lied for a year afterwards.
With that, were they trying to deceive with that?
Yes.
That's another part of the collusion.
Why would they
were
lie
trying to
to
deceive?
Why would they lie?
Hillary's team was trying to deceive.
Yes, listen. If they weren't trying to deceive after the election for a year, why did they lie about funding the Steele dossier? If there was no attempt to deceive the public, well, they did.
So wouldn't someone have been in trouble for that? Wouldn't that be there? Would be some laws broken there?
Why? To lie to the public? No, there's no law that lying to the public is.
Sure.
Who
did they must have reported something like there was some filing regarding these things, right? So there was it was done through some legal channels, right? So it's not completely secret. It's just it might be secret to like the American people or whatever, but it's not secret through like if they're doing through legal channels, they're filing paperwork regarding these things. It's not technically secret.
But again, if you want to get technical like that, then yes, they did not they were going through Fusion GPS, but the FEC said that they did not properly classify that those payments were for campaign information. They didn't, so that would be illegal. They mislabeled the paperwork. That's hiding it, correct?
I'm not sure. Wait.
If you in their FEC file, because you understand this, when you're doing a campaign, you have to correctly file all of your shit. They got fined because they did not file that Fusion GPS was doing campaign research. They paid
if that's
them
true, then yeah, they got fined for that. And then would you also agree that Trump has been fined for similar things in his campaign as well?
The Alvin Bragg shit, but that's a different matter altogether. That has nothing to do with colluding with Russia.
Sure, but it's still like for failing to file things correctly, right? Like that happens all the time in campaigns.
But to me, it's irrelevant because I don't think that that's what's necessary to offer the criticism offering. Even if she had properly filed, which she didn't, that's just to answer your burden. Your burden is, well, in order to lie, it would have had to have been illegal. I don't think so. I think in order for something to be secret, it doesn't have to be illegal. The problem,
I think for it to be collusion, I would think that they would have to be going through some shady channels at least, and I don't think that's substantiated.
Let's see. So the point that I'm trying to make is, right, it's clear that the Russia collusion, that what people were upset about was, or what the Democrats and everyone's upset, that they thought that Trump was working with Russians to get dirt on Hillary. Hillary's team worked with someone that they knew that there at one point was an investigation in for being a Russian spy, who they believed was someone who was still connected to Russian diplomats, politicians. That's the only reason he made sense as a source. You acknowledge that, right?
That's at least part of it, sure.
Okay, so they knew he at one point was investigated as a Russian spy. They basically implicitly are saying, we think he's still connected to Russians, right?
Potentially. See, I'm losing the thread. I'm
Well,
sorry.
I mean,
I know. Yeah. I feel like I look bad here, but I'm losing the thread. But yeah, go ahead.
Well, I'll try to make it simple.
Because there are things that I specifically researched that I still feel confident about, and I feel like we're moving off those things again. And we're
not moving off the things, because it goes to your point. Like, what you're doing is you're trying to be like, well, in a very technical way, when you say suspected Russian spy, well, technically he wasn't suspected because the investigation closed in 2011. And I'm saying, well, no, he could still be suspected. And the way I'm using the term is not that he absolutely was a spy, not that there was an active investigation. I'm using suspected to mean, and I think I was clear about this, right? You're right. If I'm not being a technical prick, yeah, I'm not saying he was suspected before or he was suspected by me. I'm just saying that to be a technical asshole. What I really meant, though, if I'm being 100% transparent with, I say that statement is, they were aware that he was at one point investigated as a Russian spy. They were hiring Christopher Steele that was using him as a subsource because Steele believed that he had connections to Russian diplomats and politicians. That's why when he's saying, oh, I got all this information on Trump because I have these connections to politicians in Russia. Hillary's team
hired
knew
Fusion,
this.
which hired Steele, who then used him as a source, right?
So that's the suspected Russian spy argument. The argument on the other part of collusion, I think, is much simpler, right? Colluding through an intermediary is still collusion.
I suppose, yeah, but like through several. I think it also would require like intent, right?
Yes, well, in this sense, had they not known, right? Like, so for example, I hire you, and then you hire Andrew Wilson. Right?
Yeah.
And you go to Andrew and you're like, hey man, write me a cool speech. And you do.
Or actually, can we back up? You hire a team that hires me, and then I hire Andrew.
Sure.
Right.
Fine.
So, yeah.
Right. And then Andrew gives you the speech that then goes to my team that goes to me. And I don't know that Andrew ever wrote that speech. It would be absurd to say I colluded with Andrew Wilson. I think that's fair. But you can say I got information from. But what I'm saying is Hillary's team knew that he was the primary subsource.
As of when? Like, as soon as he started being the source? As soon as Steele started using him?
Yeah, when Steele was reporting to them. Yeah. In fact, even in Steele's writings, not only do I think Steele's writings used his name, but it certainly said that he was a Russian, like, person connected to Russian fucking government. So if they knew, right, that Steele, that they're getting it, because you acknowledge this, at some point, I'm not going to pull up the evidence. Without even pulling up the evidence, you understand the only way this story makes sense would be this. At some point, Steele has to give the information to someone that gives it to Hillary's team, right? Else it's worthless.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Okay, right? So when they see that, they're going to be like, okay, who fucking told you this? Right. And even if I couldn't prove, which I can, but even if I couldn't prove that Christopher Steele said the man's name is Igor Dushenko, he's going to tell them, oh, it's a Russian dude that's connected to Russian. Because they're not going to be like, like if they just go to Christopher Steele and they're like, get us dirt, and he just hands them a sheet and they're like, well, who told you all this? And he's like, I'm not going to tell you.
Okay.
Like, that's worthless to them.
So would you at least reframe your statement to add a few caveats? Your initial statement. Would you say a better statement would be that Hillary's team secretly worked or secretly used Fusion to hire Steele, to hire Donchenko, who they got information from through legal channels, but they did it secretly. And there was a point where he was suspected of being a Russian spy, but not necessarily at that moment when they used him. Would you say that's a more fair reframing of your sentence?
It's difficult to say, and here's why, right? Because it seems that it gets away from the crux of what I'm trying to say, right? For example,
I agree. It
was
does. Yeah.
Well, no, listen, here's why. Not in the way you think. What was Trump's team? If you look, what do I put? Do you have that document in front of you? Now, by the way, this is a document that I threw together in 20 minutes. Right?
I know.
It says number 1, Russian collusion.
Mm-hmm.
So you could say, well, Rob, would you have been more accurate instead of saying Russia collusion to say Trump used back channels with people that may have been advocating at the behest of Russia to receive some sort of information using illegal channels that blah, blah, blah.
Yes, illegal channels. Importantly, illegal channels.
Okay,
That's the key difference. I would
fair enough.
Point to, yeah.
Let's say you said that. Okay, then you would also have that same criticism for everyone that referred to the Trump-Russia collusion investigation.
Sorry, I was thinking. Can you say that?
You're
I
saying that
I know I do that a lot.
should have been more accurate when saying Russia collusion, referring to Trump. You would also share that criticism with every Democrat, every media person that ever used the term Trump-Russia collusion or Trump-Russia collusion investigation.
But it does sound like Trump's team went through illegal means to do that alleged collusion, and you seem to be agreeing or acknowledging that Hillary's team did go through legal channels.
No, I'm not, right? Like, there's so many things wrong with that statement. One, no, you have no proof that, first off, you don't even have, let's start at the beginning. Do you have any proof that Trump got dirt on Hillary Clinton from Russians?
I have proof. I think we have lots of indictments that show that Donald Trump's team worked illegally with Russian actors.
Did they? What? Again, they could have worked illegally with shit. But the question is, did he get? You acknowledged that the central point was trying to get dirt on his opponent from Russians.
That was at least one of the points that people were making. I don't know if that was like the core one.
No,
I think there were variety. Yeah.
Well, no one gives a shit if it's like
I
we need to
think
investigate Trump because someone on his team may have had a DUI with a Russian.
Well, I think they're more concerned if he was working with Russians, not just to get dirt on Hillary, but to spread other disinformation that would affect the election.
Okay, so to get dirt on Hillary or other Democrats.
Yeah, or just like to assist in spreading information that would support Trump specifically and going through illegal means to do that.
So maybe getting so what? Talking points to benefit Trump? You need a campaign.
If they're setting him up illegally, yeah, that's a problem. Yeah,
that's not. The reason was they were concerned that he was working with Russians to get dirt on Hillary.
I don't know if that's the only concern. I feel like there were probably other concerns, but again, I'm willing to. that can be the third pin that we. Do you think
that Democrats would have not said fucking Paul if it was like, well, Paul Manafort was registered as FARA, and so was George Papadopoulos, and so was Carter Page, and so was Michael Flynn, and so you would have said, Democrats would have said, there's no Russia collusion. Everyone was registered FARA, no problem.
Actually. Potentially, I think a lot of it relies on they're going through illegal channels. Yeah, I think a lot of
laughable.
Points.
How would you prove? How would you prove that they went through legal channels without an investigation?
Well, you would investigate if they were suspected of going through illegal channels. I don't know exactly what initially led to that. Right?
What would lead to the?
I don't know what the inciting thing they looked fucking. What do you mean it's not? Wait. I don't feel like I'm being crazy here. I don't feel like I'm being that unreasonable, right?
You're being unreasonable because either one, you're just being unreasonable, or second, because you don't have the base fucking knowledge of what you're talking about. Democrats were furious because they said that Trump is working with Russians to steal the election, to get dirt on Hillary Clinton. That's what Democrats were mad about. They weren't going to be
get dirt. I don't know if it was just getting dirt on Hillary Clinton.
They wouldn't have been like, oh wait, he only went through Paul Manafort, who was registered FARA. No problem then. Never mind. It's totally cool that Manafort worked personally. He personally met with Vladimir Putin and got dirt on Hillary Clinton. Hell, it was disinformation. None of us care. We would never.
I think if he did that legally, I would at least me personally, I would not have as much of a problem with it.
You personally is irrelevant to the statement that I made here. Right. So then why even bring it up? The statement I made was Democrats didn't care about Russia collusion, i.e. Trump's team working behind the scenes to get dirt on Hillary from Russians, because they themselves worked behind the scenes to get dirt on Trump from Russians. And not only did they try to do it, unlike Trump, they succeeded.
I'm gonna repeat again. My core thing is that the distinction that I'm making is that Hillary's team, as far as I can tell, they seem to have gone through legal channels to do all these things, And whether or not you agree with them doing these things, it seems like they went through legal channels to do these things, and Trump's team seems to have not done that.
That's not true for various reasons. One, you've already conceded that you haven't conceded because you don't know. And so all of your argument falls apart, and I'm correct if Hillary's team have an FEC violation because they did not put. It's stupid. It's dumb.
For Danchenko specifically?
Hillary's team went through Fusion GPS for campaign research. They lied. They said, they wrote down not that they paid Fusion GPS for campaign research. The FEC found that they lied. That they paid him. They wrote a different thing down, that they were paying them for something else. Not campaign research.
I'll have to look into this.
If they did, that's fair. I'm not asking. If they did, then you concede that I'm right about number one.
If we're saying if Hillary's team illegally worked with Danchenko.
If Hillary's claim colluded because they paid Fusion GPS and lied about how they were paying him in an illegal manner.
Potentially, yeah. That sounds plausible.
Okay, I think fine. Then I'll be able to prove it. I think that's ridiculous. I think that doesn't answer the prompt whatsoever. But fine, if you're willing to admit for whatever fucking insane reason that makes no sense to me that would prove that I'm correct about that statement, so be it. All right.
That they illegally worked. That they collude. I would say that more strongly substantiates collusion is what I would say. If they were illegally working with him.
The Hillary team get fined by the FEC for not properly disclosing payments to Fusion GPS. Yes, Hillary Clinton's 2016 campaign, along with the DNC, was fined by the Federal Election Commission for not properly disclosing payments to Fusion GPS related to the Steele dossier.
So they misreported them as legal services instead of opposition research.
That's correct.
Right.
So
did Trump's team misreport the labeling?
Why are you moving the goalposts? Why are you moving the goalposts? All you said that was sufficient was that for collusion it had to be secret. And I said, well, it was secret. And you said, no, for it to be secret, it had to be illegal. Okay. I just
No, that's not what I was saying. I was saying so secret and illegal are two separate parts of collusion, or they're two separate possible definitions of collusion, right? They're two parts of the definition of collusion, and either one could be applicable.
Okay,
but I'm saying
it was certainly secret.
And
if you're saying the other part of collusion is that it was illegal, then it was illegal. The reason I'm saying that it was secret.
Hang on. So I think part of this comes down to like them reporting it as legal services, right? Like I think again, like this happens a lot. This is a very common thing with campaign. Like this kind of misreport seems to be very common. So I think the implication here is that they were illegally doing it in a way that involves some intent, right? Like if this is just like they checked the wrong box, is what it sounds like. They checked the wrong, like they misreported the category. But it seems like Trump's team didn't report them at all. Like they didn't even.
This is a bullshit equivocation. It's bullshit.
I don't think so.
You did. We could go back and look at the tape, right? You made the argument that I said, oh, so being secret that would meet collusion. It's clearly secret. You're like, well,
I said if they lied, right?
Please let me finish. You said prove that it's secret, and I was like, well, they didn't. They weren't forthright about it. They weren't forthright that they paid to the American people. And you said, no, the American people, it doesn't matter. What would matter would be if there was some sort of illegal way that they went about it so that it was secret because there was an illegal, okay, so then I proved. Now, when you say, well, they put it down as legal services, when you said you put it down as legal services, that's what, right. The reason that they put it down not as legal service, like there's a reason that the FEC fined it. What do you think the reason is?
You're implying that they did this deceitfully, and I don't think that's substantiated either.
I mean, I don't know what to say. Deceit implies that you know. Deceit implies that you can see into their head.
No, absolutely not. No, I mean we have.
Okay, then how would I prove that they did it deceitfully?
Well, I mean we examine intent in a lot of different ways through the law, right? like in
Okay,
court
so
all
then-
the time.
so
we don't
then
have to
how
like mind read to understand
So
people's
what's
intent.
your, what's your, so
circumstantial.
we know that the reason this law exists in the first place, this is so far afield, it's so fucking ridiculous. And this
No,
is just,
I think this is actually pretty core to the specific thing.
because it doesn't matter. Collusion doesn't, the definition you gave that it could be secret has nothing to do with secret, only matters if it's illegal. Bullshit. So we're already
Sure, I agree. Yeah.
So then what all
You're
this
kind of
doesn't matter.
leaning on like specific words that I may have. I'm not saying I haven't said like some. I've described some things slightly inaccurately here, but like when we talk about collusion specifically, like I feel like you either need like when I'm thinking secrecy, it's not just that like they weren't posting it publicly on Twitter or whatever. Like if it's secret as in like they're not going through the proper channels to do so. Right, that's the thing that I'm thinking. Like whether it's like legal, illegal, they're not going through the proper channels. Okay, and here it seems like they went through the proper channels. They just checked the wrong fucking box.
You have no like again. No, it's not the proper channel. If it's not just checking the wrong box, isn't what it is. It was because they paid.
Exactly what it is.
That's not what it is. It's because they didn't want to pay them as campaign finance, right? If, for example, if you're a lawyer and I have you do work for me for my campaign, there are certain financial obligations that I have to do that then mean that you become public. The work you're doing for me becomes public because I've paid you as a process of the campaign. That all has to be transparent. But if I'm just paying you for, quote, legal fees, then none of that has to be transparent. In addition, Hillary Clinton's team, along with the DNC, effectively denied or avoided publicly acknowledging that they paid for the Steele dossier for a period of time following its emergencies in 2016, particularly during the election cycle and into 2017.
Where are you reading that from? Sorry.
Just put it in AI, but it.
No.
But yes, they were. In fact, there was a report.
If I remember, because I'm an AI defender, but like I use ChatGPT a lot. Sure. And what I like to do, like I follow up with like, oh, give me a source for this a lot of times, and it usually does. So I'm just saying, like it might be helpful. I would appreciate the further reading if you can ask it that.
Specific in a. So here's what it says. Initial non-disclosure. During the 2016 election, neither the Clinton campaign nor the DNC public acknowledged funding the dossier. The payments, approximately $12 million, were reported to the FEC as legal services, masking the opposition research purposes. That's from the AP, March 31st, 2022. Post-election silence. After the election, as the dossier's content leaked to BuzzFeed, campaign officials did not volunteer the funding information. The silence can be interpreted as an implicit denial, as they did not correct media narratives suggesting the dossier's origins were independent or unknown. Specific denials by proxy. John Podesta, who was Hillary's campaign manager, which you should count because you're counting Manafort, who was Trump's campaign, says in a CNN interview on October 24, 2016, Clinton campaign chairman Podesta denied knowledge of the dossier specifics, saying, I don't know the origins of the report. It wasn't a direct denial of payment, but it avoided acknowledging the campaign's roles. Debbie Wasserman Schultz, in November of 2016 MSNBC appearance, the DNC chair dismissed the dossier as unverified, but didn't address the funding, effectively sidestepping the issue. Hillary Clinton, in a December 2016 press conference, Clinton called the dossier's release a distraction and did not mention her campaign's involvement, which could have been seen as tacit omission.
Could have been seen. Could have.
Right.
I'm trying to find the specific, or was that also from AI? Sorry, I wasn't sure if you were reading the.
Well, yes, but it was linking the sources.
Yeah, can you send me one of those?
Well, it's you're gonna have to put it in.
That's what I'm more again, because I use AI all the time. I just know it gets little pieces, and also like it builds up narratives that usually support me, and I that's why I pull up the source.
It doesn't have the links there. So type in CNN interview October 24, 2016 on CNN.com. John Podesta, quote, I don't know the origins of that report. Type that.
Don't know the origins of that report. CNN. What year? 2016?
October 24, 2016.
It's a CNN article from then?
That's what it says, CNN.com.
Anyway, we can come back.
If I find this one piece of article, then you'll admit you're wrong. That Podesta said, I don't know where the dossier came from.
And you're saying he was lying about that?
How would he not know if he's the campaign manager?
Well, I mean, if he just didn't have that information at the time,
I mean, it's sensible. The fucking goalpost moving is fucking.
You're saying he's lying. You're saying okay. you're saying he's lying about something that I'm not sure what the specific claim was. And you're saying the only reason that he wasn't charged is because the FBI is so corrupt. They love Hillary Clinton
Here's
and they
the
hate Trump.
Hill.com. The Hill.com. All right. Hillary Clinton from Brett Samuels, October 26, 2017. Hillary Clinton's former campaign manager and the former chairwoman of the DNC privately denied to congressional investigators that they knew about the funding of the dossier containing scandalous allegations about Trump, CNN reported Thursday. Okay. Podesta, the former campaign manager, and Wasserman Schultz each said in separate closed-door interviews with the Senate Intelligence Committee that they did not know who funded an opposition dossier on Trump. Podesta's attorney also said in the interview. The Post reported Tuesday that Clinton's campaign, let me finish. The Post reported Tuesday that Clinton's campaign worked with the DNC, paid millions to law firm Perkins Coie, which worked with opposition research firm Fusion GPS to construct the dossier. The interviews took place before it was disclosed that Clinton's campaign and the DNC had paid for the research. It's against the law to make false statements to Congress. Wasserman Schultz said through a spokesman Wednesday that she was not aware of anything related to the dossier. DNC chairman Tom Perez, who was not with the organization at the time, said the document was funded and compiled and said he learned about it only a few days ago. The White House has used the news that they paid for the dossier to question its credibility. Democrats, meanwhile, downplayed the news, saying campaigns frequently conduct research on their opponents.
True.
Okay.
Can you send me the article? You said you found this in an article? Can you send me that?
Yes. Where do you want it?
Private chat's fine. Or you can post it in your chat so that everyone can see it. I mean,
okay,
probably better.
All of this is irrelevant.
Okay. Well, just to back up to my specific claim, the main thing I came here to defend is that I don't think that you substantiated that Hillary Clinton's team colluded with Igor Danchenko, or that at the time he was a suspected Russian spy. I think that alone is still shaky.
We already dealt.
It remains shaky after all this. Yeah,
we already dealt with the suspected Russian spy aspect. Now we're talking about whether or not they colluded. I say colluding with an intermediary is still collusion. You're like, but I don't think it was collusion because for it to be collusion, it has to be secret. But it would only be secret if illegal. It was illegal. Okay, so then what's it matter if it was illegal or not, if it was secret?
I think that, well, I think that if we're relating it back to the Trump stuff, it was illegal. Like the Trump's collusion.
It wasn't.
Was
you haven't shown
illegal,
any evidence of that. You keep making.
Well, I mean, that's what I'm saying. All the Mueller investigation stuff, all the indictments, all the charges, that stuff. There were charges, there were indictments that actually had guilty pleas, right?
Show me those that had anything to do. Okay, I can say this. There was a fine paid by Hillary Clinton, right? Surrounding.
Yes, for checking the wrong box.
No. Don't tell me what it was for. Yes or no? Was there a fine paid regarding the working with a Russian to get information against Trump? Yes or no? Was there a fine?
There was a fine for reporting that incorrectly. Yes.
Okay, it doesn't matter. So you said yes. So
it does matter because it was still reported. It was still reported.
It does not matter. And I'll tell you what. Hey, audience, did you?
That means that even proves it's not secret because it was reported.
No. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, right? All we know is there was crimes that were processed that Hillary's team was guilty of surrounding colluding with Russians.
Crimes that she was guilty of. They settled it. They settled that case. So that doesn't mean guilt, right? Settling a case doesn't mean you're guilty, right?
She paid a fine.
They settled. They settled. They paid a fine.
She paid a fine. If I find out that she was
agreed to pay $113,000 to settle a federal, here I've got a article. But you agree that just settling isn't the same as being guilty, right?
Sure, I guess. But it's
otherwise, I mean, Trump settles quite a lot of things that I would also say he's not guilty of, right?
But settling with a third party is different than settling with the authorities. Right? Nonetheless, the reason I bring up this absurd fucking argument is the other day, like one of the first interactions I had with you recently in Sarah Tomatoes, you made this bold claim. Unlike you, Rob, I don't just say shit without fucking knowing. I don't do that.
Whoa.
That's what you said.
Whoa.
Yes.
What I said is I like to know. I want to know. I desire to know. I want to know better.
Okay,
And I think I still think that your framing of this is, I still stand by that your framing of this is disinformational.
You can say that. You keep going back to these 2 points as we
because
keep
these are the things I came here to talk about.
As we keep shattering them over, we're like, okay, well, then if A, then B, you're like, yeah, and if B, then C, yeah, and then I'm like, okay, but that's not true, and you're like, but I still want to go back to A. I just want to go back to A. That's what you've done constantly. So again, I'll ask you. I'll ask you. You're definitively saying that Trump did illegal things in an effort to, or in colluding with Russia. Show me one.
Trump's team at least did. Yeah.
Yeah. Show me one.
Okay. Let's see. What were the Trump
to collude with Russia in the 2016 election to get disinformation on Hillary?
Wait. You're adding that to get disinformation or to get information. Collusion broadly. Wouldn't collusion broadly, even if it's for other purposes, wouldn't that be relevant? If it's for other purposes regarding the election that aren't specifically about Hillary Clinton.
Okay, regarding the election,
right?
Sure.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, here's key findings of the Mueller report.
Now, what we're looking, just before you read, this is going to be information that Trump's team members were guilty of colluding with Russia to influence the 2016 election. Correct? Yes or no? Yes.
Say it again. Yeah.
You're gonna show us evidence that Trump's team, people on Trump's team, were charged with crimes, found guilty of crimes for colluding with Russia to get information to affect the 2016 election. Not necessarily against Hillary, but information in general to affect the election.
Colluding about information regarding the election, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Show me the crimes. Let's see it.
Let's see. The special counsel investigation uncovered extensive criminal activity. The investigation produced 37 indictments, 7 guilty pleas or convictions, and compelling evidence that the president obstructed justice on multiple occasions. Mueller also uncovered and referred 14 criminal matters to other components of the Department of Justice. Trump's associates repeatedly lied to investigators about their contacts with Russians, and President Trump refused to answer questions about his efforts to impede federal proceedings and to influence the testimony of witnesses. A statement signed by over 1,000 former federal prosecutors concluded that if any other American engaged in the same efforts to impede federal proceedings the way Trump did, they would likely be indicted for multiple charges of obstruction of justice. And this is all regarding
okay, I didn't. Did any of that strike you as Trump's team colluding with Russians in an illegal way to affect the 2016? Which one of those was that?
I think it does.
Obstructing justice isn't that. Lying's not that. So what was it?
Well, lying about what? That would matter, right?
It doesn't matter. No. Why does that matter? Wait.
If they're lying about things regarding the election, information about the election, yeah.
That's not true. You said if he did illegal things. Hillary's team then lied about their FEC filing. Right?
They checked the wrong box, yeah, for sure.
There was no crime that I'm aware of, and I'm 99% sure that anyone on Trump's team was alleged to have colluded with Russians to influence the 2016 election. No crime.
This is the link I just put back. I'm reading further down on it. It says the investigation, quote unquote, identified numerous links between the Russian government and the Trump campaign and established the Trump campaign, quote unquote, showed interest in WikiLeaks releases of documents and welcomed their potential to damage candidate Clinton. Michael Cohen pursued a hotel residence project in Moscow on behalf of Trump while he was campaigning, and Trump personally signed a letter of intent. Senior members of the Trump campaign, including Manafort, Trump Jr., Jared Kushner, took a this is the June 9th, 2016 meeting. I'm sure you know about this with the Russians at Trump Tower. Okay. Russians had after they were informed that Russians had derogatory information that Clinton was part of Russia and its government's support for Mr. Trump. Right. Okay.
Real quick pause. Any of that so far that you've read, any of that's being charged with a crime to get to information to affect the 2000? Anything so far that you just read there about being charged with a crime to affect the 2016 election? Working with.
So Russians. Would you agree that all of that is regarding the 2016 election, regarding getting information about the 2016? You agree with that, right?
It's not a crime.
Well, some of Paul Manafort's contacts were, but
okay. What was Paul Manafort's contact regarding to affect the 2016 election that he was charged with?
I think this has sources. Let's see. Okay, so here's Okay, here I think here's the part that again it kind of comes back to my core here. So it's the report contains no evidence that any Trump campaign official reported their contacts with Russia or WikiLeaks to U.S. law enforcement authorities during the campaign or presidential transition, despite public reports on Russia hacking starting in June 2016 and candidate Trump's August 2016 intelligence briefing warning him that Russia was seeking to interfere in the election. So again, it comes back to them not going through the legal channels, right? So
No,
if you're saying there's no crimes related to that, if you're saying there's no crimes that were related to that, then we can we can dig into that and find out. But just to be clear,
read that sentence again. Read that sentence again.
The report contains no evidence that any Trump campaign official reported their contacts with Russia or WikiLeaks to U.S. law enforcement authorities during the campaign or presidential transition, despite public reports on Russian hacking starting in June 2016 and candidate Trump's August 2016 intelligence briefing warning him that Russia was seeking to interfere with the election.
Okay, two things. Where does that show evidence that there were crimes charged relating to that?
I'm not saying this specific sentence says that, just to be clear, right?
Okay,
I'm not saying
so
this,
then
but that sounds like it. That sounds like
nothing
they
to help you. Secondly, isn't that the exact thing we just went through with Wasserman Schultz and Podesta? That we said no one reported that they paid for this. No one.
Wait, are you talking about the Steele dossier?
Funding of the dossier, yes.
But again, it was report. It was just it was marked as something different, right? It wasn't marked as opposition. It was marked as legal services.
That's not true. They did not say.
That is true.
Okay, so I want you to show me that they marked it as legal services and said we paid them for campaign research, but we just checked the wrong box. Show me proof of that.
They marked that they so just the chart the whatever they paid the fine for that was regarding misreporting, right? What were they misreporting?
They were misreporting that instead of admitting that they paid campaign finance research, they said that they paid for legal services.
Legal services. Yeah. So again, it's a category.
So then they never admitted. So then they never admitted that they paid for campaign finance services.
But they admitted that they paid these specific organizations for legal services, right?
Right. And they had been paying those organizations for legal services in the past. What does that have to do with the fact if I pay a law firm to help me through a divorce, and I also pay them to help me with a campaign, and I just write it down as legal services, could I say, oh, well, never mind that I was honest that they helped me with the campaign? No.
So I think the big symmetry breaker here is that, again, the report contains no evidence that Trump or any Trump campaign official reported their contacts with Russia. So it's not even just that they misreported anything about them. They just didn't report them at all.
That is irrelevant to the question.
That seems very relevant.
So just to be clear, if Trump's team had said, hey, we once played bingo with Klemenich, you'd say, oh, that's fair. They reported that they met.
Do you think they were talking about bingo?
No, just like I don't think Hillary's team, when they said legal services to a law firm, were admitting that it was campaign finance, campaign research.
Wait.
Your argument seems to be here. It doesn't matter if Hillary's team failed to disclose that they paid for the dossier, because they did disclose that they paid for something. And that's all that matters. As long as they said they paid for something, that's fair enough. But if Trump's team had said, hey, we met with Russians for something.
I'm not saying it's fair. Like, I'm not saying that they did everything perfectly. Obviously they didn't. Otherwise they wouldn't have to pay the fine. But what I am saying is that it's to make the case that it's collusion. I feel like we need something stronger than just they misrepresented the. Show me. Okay. So and we would need intent. I think also that they actually actively tried. Instead of just somebody somewhere wrote legal services instead of opposition research, whatever, like that. Yeah, I feel like we need some stronger evidence.
Show me any evidence, or show me any definition of the word collusion that says that to be secret, it has to be illegal. Go ahead.
Well, almost every definition I pulled up was unlawful or secret.
Okay, so was the funding secret?
It was reported. Trump's was not reported.
It was not reported. Show me the evidence that it was reported. Show me the evidence from Hillary's team that it was reported
as legal services.
Okay, does that? So it said legal services to pay for this dossier.
I don't know if that's not what they got in trouble for. They got in trouble for not charging it as opposition research.
Show me, your argument is not disclosing is enough. Show me the evidence that they disclosed to anyone that they paid for this dossier. Show me the evidence. You have evidence that they said we paid Fusion GPS. You have evidence that they said we paid Fusion GPS for something. Show me the evidence that they said we paid them for the Steele dossier. Go ahead.
I'm saying that they wrote it as legal services, and those legal services included the opposition research, right? And you're saying there's no.
Show me that.
I'm willing to suspect that it does exist, but I could be wrong. I don't know. I assume it does.
Proof.
I don't know.
Show me any proof. Now,
okay. Okay. You say show me. You gotta give me a second to actually search, right? Like, okay, I don't have it. Obviously, I don't have it pulling out my nails.
As you're looking, right? You then went to like, but Trump's team was convicted of crimes with colluding to affect the election, right? Now you default back to, but they didn't admit that they talked to Russians. They didn't admit that they talked to WikiLeaks. But
yes, the report. Okay, yeah, they definitely didn't. There was no report.
What's that have to do with your claim that there were people charged with colluding with Russians to affect the 2016 election?
Well, I'm not saying the charge was collusion. I never said the charges were collusion.
I didn't say. Let me repeat what I said.
You just said I said that. So.
Okay. Show me any evidence that using any word, so we'll take out the word collusion, that there was a charge that was filed that said you in an illegal manner tried to get information from Russians in 2016 and that's illegal. There's evidence that they were charged with obstruction. There's evidence that they were charged with lying, but there's no evidence that they were charged, nor would it be a crime to try to get dirt on your opponents from Russians. None.
But you keep adding in the specifically trying to get dirt on your. I never focused on that part. I never focused on that part.
Okay, trying to get.
It's legal to try to get dirt on your opposition. It is legal to try to get dirt on your opposition, right? We agree.
Yes.
Yes.
Let me rephrase. This is so fucking insane. But let me rephrase. Yeah. Show me the evidence that it is a crime, that there was any crime whatsoever regarding Trump's team getting information from Russia to help in the 2016 election.
Okay, let's see. Special counsel declined to exonerate Trump. Okay, what was Trump not exonerated for? Just
obstruction.
I assume you know. From the Mueller report, what was the things that he wasn't exonerated for?
Obstruction.
Obstruction regarding what?
It was all sorts of. He didn't cooperate. He didn't tell us the truth. Irrelevant.
Including sought to impede investigations, including through one-on-one meetings with senior officials. Stemming. Why is that irrelevant?
Nothing. It's nothing to do with a crime stemming from trying to get information from Russia to affect the 2016 election.
Well, it sounds like that's the thing. He's obstructing investigation into that thing, right?
And yet that thing wasn't a crime. In fact, that's why the Mueller report was in two parts. There was part one, which had to do with the Russia collusion shit, and there was no connection whatsoever that Trump committed any crimes regarding that. And then part two was, but did he obstruct our investigation into that?
Wait, I'm sorry. You said there was no crimes committed by Trump doing that? Because it sounds like there was. He wasn't exonerated from any of those. So he was.
Show me the crimes. Then show me the crimes that Trump was not exonerated from. It's some sort of crime that was alleged that Trump was charged with regarding trying to get information from Russians in the 2016 election.
Okay, so I assume that would be related to the 5 episodes of obstructive conduct, right?
No.
He's obstructing things related to that, right? Don't. Come on. I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to learn. Walk me through it.
I'm accused of working with the mafia, right? You say, Rob, I think you're working with the mafia. You're in charge of law enforcement. You start looking into it, right? I fucking destroy evidence. That's obstruction, right? That evidence never shows that I work with the mafia. Can I still be charged with obstruction?
Potentially.
Right, I can. Because the act of lying to investigators, the act of hiding evidence from the investigators itself could be a crime, regardless if the underlying crime that was allegedly alleged happened or not. The underlying crime, which Democrats were talking about, was Russian collusion. Things centered around the idea of Russia collusion, which they were talking about getting disinformation on Hillary. You throw a fucking conniption. No, it's not just disinformation. It could also be positive information about people not Hillary. Any information that was being attempted to be gotten from Russia. That's what they meant about Russia collusion, but it had to be illegally. A crime.
Any illegal.
Yes. Okay, so show me the crime.
So there would be, it wasn't crimes that Trump himself was charged with.
His team.
Yeah, his team. Okay. So we want to look at the indictments from Mueller's team, right?
Yep.
So what, I assume you can educate me on some of these things then. So what specific thing, who was indicted?
If I educate you, you'll say, I need to look that up. I need to. So just
Well,
look it up.
I'm looking it up right now. We can do it together. Let's learn together right now. Like, why
I
not?
don't need to learn together. I got like 15 more minutes in a minute. You tell me, you're the one making the declarative statement. You have no fucking clue. You're now admitting none. Because you're talking
I know that a lot of people. I know that there were at least seven guilty pleas, I think. And I don't know what exactly those 7 guilty pleas were, but I want to look into them, and I suspect, based on everything else I know about this, it seems like they did have to do with because the scope of the investigation was about Russian election interference and links between Trump and Russian officials, and alleged conspiracy between Trump campaign and Russian agents. I'm reading from the Wikipedia page right now. And so all of that sounds like it would relate to if that's the scope of the investigation, and there are indictments related to that, including like the
so you'd be shocked. You'd be shocked
stuff.
if there wasn't. You'd be shocked if they didn't indict anyone for colluding with Russia in any way, trying to get information with
Russia. They didn't indict anyone related to anything regarding election interference, links between Trump's associates and campaign and Russian officials, conspiracy between Trump campaign and Russian agents, potential obstruction of justice, financial investigations.
Why are you adding all that shit? Potential obstruction of
justice.
justice.
The scope. I'm reading it. I'm reading the scope. I'm telling you that all this is all related to Russian interference.
That's such short. Now, notice how you moved the goalpost right there, right? The original argument was, I know they did something illegal as far as colluding with Russia, which we define as illegally trying to get information from Russia to affect the 2016 election. I'm like, they did.
Okay, so I'll isolate to the first few here. So Russian election interference, links between Trump associates and Russian officials, alleged conspiracy between Trump campaigns and Russian agents.
Why would that
You're
matter?
saying that those 3 have nothing to do with the actual guilty pleas.
I didn't hear number 3. Why would number 2
I'll repeat it. I'll repeat them. Number 1 is Russian.
I asked you. I heard number 2. Why would having connections with Russian officials matter?
If they're done illegally.
Why? What's that have to do with getting information?
You're supposed to report that shit. It's the whole point.
No. Again, this is what. Could you meet with a Russian official and do something illegal that had nothing to do with the 2016 election?
Potentially, but I think it's very obvious, like this was regarding the 2016 election.
That's not true at all. In fact, the charges stemming from Paul Manafort from 2012 when he was working with Klimenik involving Yanukovych. That's where many of those charges stem from.
Many of them. So what about the ones that were related to the 2016 election?
Read them. That's what we're doing.
Let's do it. Russia investigations. Where's the actual indictments? The actual charges. I hate when it gets quiet like this.
Now, I just want to be clear, just so my audience knows.
Okay.
Just so my audience knows. Once he's unable to do this, he's just going to move the goalpost to something else. Just so everyone knows. He's going to say, well, obstruction would still meet that or something like that. Watch.
So one of the things he was found guilty of was conspiracy to defraud. Regarding what, though? I mean, do you know what he was found guilty of regarding?
I think it has to do with payments or bank accounts or something like that.
Bank accounts about, like, and you're saying that was all about 2013 stuff. None of it had to do with 2016.
I think it was mostly, I think that there were connections, that there were still bank accounts and shit like that from 2017. What's that matter? If those bank accounts aren't associated with him trying to illegally get information from Russia, what does it fucking matter?
Yeah, I'm asking AI now because I've been trying to read like off Wikipedia and shit. I'm gonna use my own ChatGPT now. Did anything actually substantiate collusion? That's a good question.
No. Wait a minute. Let me tell you why not. Because that's not going to say that criminal nature is necessary for collusion. So it's going to say things like, well, Manafort talked to Klimenik. That's collusion.
Well, it's saying he was not convicted of collusion, which I agree with. He was not convicted of collusion. So we're starting off on a good foot, right? We agree that he was never charged or convicted of collusion.
Pause. I'll bet that the next line somewhere in there it's going to say, but there is evidence that he talked with Russians or he talked with Klimenik or something like that. It's going to say that. But it's not going to say that he was charged with a crime because of that. It's going to use the term collusion like I'm using it, saying that a crime's not necessary. You're the one who has this proprietary definition of the term collusion that no one else has.
Not proprietary. It's
Show
secret or illegal. That's I
Where
mean I
does
googled
secret-
collusion. That's where I got it.
So secret doesn't apply, just illegal.
Secret or illegal. Both. So
Right.
both these.
So that-
Trumps
right.
were both. Trumps were both.
Oh, show me. So you're making the claim that was illegal. Show me.
Wait, which? Yeah. Okay, hang on. Okay, so here's key details involving Manafort. Manafort shared internal Trump campaign polling data and strategy with this is Constantine. This is what you're talking about?
Yep.
So he shared internal Trump campaign polling data in 2013 with him?
No. Why would that make
Okay,
sense?
so yeah, it wouldn't make sense. That's what I'm saying.
Right.
So he's
Is it
contact
a
with him was
crime?
not
Is
from
it a crime?
2013.
Is it a crime to share polling data with someone? Is
Seems like
sharing
that's-
polling data the same as getting information illegally from them to affect the election?
I'm not saying they're the same thing. I'm saying that's part of this case, right? So I don't know
Okay,
why that's
but
that, obviously it's I'm saying that is likely relevant to the charges, but like we agree then at least that Manafort did share internal Trump campaign polling data and strategy with Kilmer. You're saying
Yeah,
it's not. You're saying it's fine. You're saying it's okay to do. Okay.
You're looking for one thing: evidence that someone was charged with a crime regarding trying to get information to affect the 2016 election. That's what you're looking for. Sending polling data wouldn't meet that criteria, and it wasn't a crime, so it fails that criteria for two reasons.
So wait a minute. Can you tell me again what I'm trying to prove, according to you?
Why would I have to tell you that if it's your argument?
Well, because I feel like a lot of times you describe what I'm about to do, and it doesn't match exactly what I said, but it's like close to it.
Your argument is, in order to say that Trump's team colluded in a way that was different than Hillary's team, which I'm saying is colluding is working behind the scenes to get dirt on your opponent. That's what I'm saying. You're saying, no, that's not what you're saying. You're saying that it has to be illegal or secretive, and you don't qualify as secretive. I don't even fucking know what you're saying on the secret part, but on the legal, you're saying, but there were charges that showed that Trump's team committed illegal acts trying to get information to swing the 2016 election. That's what you're going to prove. That's what you said existed. You keep saying it was criminal. What they did was criminal, trying to work with Russia to affect the 2016 election. That's why it's bad. That's what you keep saying.
Like his okay. So he lied about his okay. I see. So he lied about his communications with Kilimnik. That was what was illegal about it. It's not that he had those connections. He lied about them. So he did it secretly. Basically, he lied about them.
So what does that have to do with the claim that you're trying to prove that that people were charged with crimes with illegally working with Russians to affect the 2016 election?
Why did he lie about those meetings with Kilimnik?
What does it matter why it's irrelevant to the question?
What were the meetings about?
What does it mean? It was about giving polling data.
Okay, that's it.
Show me the crime.
That was the first one I read, right?
Show me the crime.
Well, the crimes that he got, the things that he was convicted of regarding this seem to be the failure to register as a foreign agent. So he's convicted with his relation to Ukraine lobbying work. You're saying that was his 2013 stuff. And then also lying to the FBI and breaching a plea deal. And this is regarding misleading investigators, especially regarding his contacts with Kilimnik. So what else? Let's see. I'm learning a lot here, actually.
All of this is irrelevant to the actual point. I'm just going through.
Well, it's relevant to what you're asserting. Yeah.
No, it's irrelevant to.
But it's super interesting that we're learning more about. Like I like that we're learning about.
I knew all of this. I'm not learning anything, right? It's what's irrelevant. What's irrelevant about it is as follows. I'm literally jumping through all of your loops, all of them, which is not what people were talking about when they talked about Russia collusion, but you're feigning ignorance or you don't know. And so I'm jumping through all of your hoops and saying, even if we accepted your interpretation, which is bullshit, but even if we accepted it based on your extrapolation, you're still wrong.
Yeah, and I don't agree with that, but that's okay. Okay, so the reason the lies were at like an issue is because his misstatements obstructed Mueller's ability to assess whether or not there was a coordinated effort between the Trump campaign and Russian operatives. So like the whole thing that he was in trouble for was kind of muddying the waters regarding that specific thing, right?
Okay, so did Mueller's team find that there was that in charge of crime?
Well, let's see that. So that was just the obstruction of justice charges, but I mean, Manafort was charged with quite a few things, and also Trump pardoned him, right? So you're saying that like that's probably good. You would agree?
Did Mueller charge him with the crime?
He charged him with a lot of
surrounding
crimes.
that? Did Mueller charge him with a crime regarding trying to influence the 2016 election with Russia getting information?
Influencing the outcome of the election.
All right, man. I'm going to give you 4 more minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm good. I'm good to close it up soon too. I appreciate having me on. It's fun.
It's late. I'm not trying to be a big.
Yeah, I know you've been streaming all day. I didn't expect to come up tonight either. Right? I dug into all this, like I said, like a week ago or so.
I gotta
and
read
the stuff that
super chats and shit still. So.
Oh yeah. I'll let you out. Don't worry.
He didn't, Coder. He didn't. Mueller didn't charge anyone with working with Russia to affect with working with Russia to get dirt on Hillary in the 2016 election, or again, your proprietary argument, to get information to affect the 2016 election.
You might be right.
Cool. So you concede I'm correct?
About this stuff, but this is a separate claim to what I came in to argue about.
It's not a separate claim. It has to do with the fact that we already talked about the idea of a suspected spy, and we went through that. This has to go with the idea of collusion, of you saying that Hillary didn't collude. And I was like, sure, she did. She just did it through an intermediary. And you said, no, that's not collusion. But Trump's team was collusion. And the reason Trump's team was collusion, no, it has nothing to do with not reporting. It has to do with
they didn't report legally or illegally.
No, it was that it was a crime. It is not a crime. It is not colluding with Russia unless it's a crime, according to you. And you said
so by that standard, neither one is a crime, right?
Right.
Neither one is
so
collusion.
Right.
Okay.
I would say they're both collusion. What I'm saying is, when Democrats
you would say Trump colluded? I didn't remember you taking that. I didn't realize you agreed to that.
I do not think that that Trump colluded with Russians to affect the 2016 election, because he got no information whatsoever from any Russian to affect the election. I do think that Hillary's team colluded with Russians to affect the 2016 election because they did get disinformation from a Russian, a person who was previously suspected of being a Russian spy. That disinformation was then used to affect the election. That information was then used by the FBI without verifying it to illegally spy on Trump. So by any objective metric, the Democrats colluded with Russians far more than Trump did. And they didn't give a shit. They claimed to caring about Russia collusion when it came to Trump. And when Hillary's team was colluding far more seriously, more blatantly, they did not give a shit. That's my argument.
Okay.
And it's 100%
so you're saying, just
true.
To be clear, so Hillary's team colluded, Trump's team did not. That's just fundamentally, that's your argument?
I'm saying, yes, that's basically my argument.
Okay, I would say by your standard, neither one colluded. That's my argument.
Well, I would disagree, because I don't think collusion needs to be, and like the word collusion is sort of irrelevant anyways, right? The point that I'm making is, did you successfully work with Russia to get information that was useful in the election?
Well, I care about whether they tried to go through they tried to use illegal channels to
but you don't even know. But again, that's getting 15 ways to beg the question. One, there was no. Okay, but then show me the illegal channels that Trump's team tried to go through.
The fact that they failed to report those meetings, they were supposed to report those meetings.
That's not true, right? Because that would only matter if they failed to report those meetings and got dirt.
I don't know if that's true.
To affect the 2016
there's other things. There's other reasons they might have had to report those meetings, right?
Just to be clear,
no.
If Hillary's
you're focusing on the dirt. I'm not focusing on getting dirt from those meetings. I'm focused on the meetings.
If Hillary's team, it turns out, right, failed to disclose that they met some Russian during the 2016 election, right?
Which you had no evidence they met with Danchenko, to be clear. Hillary's team never had direct contact with Danchenko, right?
And somehow we say, hey, that was a FARA violation, even if it extends the statute of limitations. You would say, therefore, yeah.
If that turns out to be the case,
that's collusion. Yeah, if that was the case,
I would say that qualifies as collusion more than what I understand happened right now.
So just to be clear, then if we could prove that Glenn Simpson from Fusion GPS communicated with Christopher Steele or with Igor Danchenko, both of who were foreign and did not have a FARA filing, then he did exactly that.
Unless there's some other legal channel that they went through.
It wouldn't matter if they also went through a different legal channel. If
Well, it would
he
be because
was-
my concern is that my concern. Okay, to be clear, my concern with Trump is that I think that they avoided legal channels specifically. That's my whole thing. I think they did intentionally avoid
it's
legal
absurd.
channels.
And
That's my
prove,
issue.
Let me prove how I know that's absurd. Hey, did you know that actually Jeff Sessions, who was working with this team, did register under FARA?
Well, was Jeff Sessions charged for not registering? Like, anything regarding that?
No one in Trump's team was.
Sure.
Manafort was charged for not registering FARA in 2013. He wasn't charged
At
with
least,
not registering.
That was at least part of it, yeah.
He wasn't charged with FARA for fucking anything involving the 2016 election at all.
I don't know if that part's true.
Show me. That's what you were looking for. Any crime alleging the information with the 2016 election.
And that was
Well, I gotta say, some of your like this. Yeah. I assume it's some of your followers in here. This is like unbelievably stupid. So legality doesn't matter, Rob. Legality matters on a far many things.
Think legality matters.
Legality matters on a far many things. However, it does not matter when we're talking about this specific example of Russia collusion. The person saying that it has to be illegal is Coder. I'm saying it doesn't have to be in order to be considered collusion or not. Show me the evidence. It has
to be illegal or
evidence,
secret, right?
Show me any evidence that there was a failure to register as FARA in regarding to lobbying regarding the 2016 election.
Just for Paul Manafort or anyone?
Anyone.
All right, this is the last thing, and I'll let you go, okay?
In Trump's team, let me be clear.
Yeah. I got. Yeah, don't worry. Yeah, that's what I'm looking at. What about? Wait, no, this is Ukraine. Well, what about Sam Patton?
What was he charged with?
Pleaded guilty to failing to register under FARA in 2018.
He was a member of Trump's team. It was.
I believe so. Let me see. He was a lobbyist for. Hang on. Sam Patton, campaign adjacent lobbyist.
Okay, he was
also Elliot Broidy was charged with conspiracy to violate FARA. And
when was this by Mueller?
I just searched for key FARA related cases regarding Trump's team, but I assume these are related to Mueller. That's okay. We can dig in more. I appreciate you having me on.
Far specific charges. The indictment against Manafort and Gates through their consulting firm DMP International act as unregistered agents of the government of Ukraine, the Party of Regions, and Yanukovych from approximately 2006 to 2015. Not the election.
That's Sam Patton?
That was Manafort.
Yeah, but we're talking about. I'm sorry. I thought we were talking about Sam Patton, right? It's okay. It doesn't matter.
Sam Patton's role in
he was a campaign adjacent lobbyist.
Campaign.
So the primary people were Manafort, Gates, which those ones seem to be from 2000 up to 2014, and then Flynn and Patton were the other two.
There is no public evidence that Sam Patton held a role with or staff position with Trump in the 2016 campaign.
But he was a campaign, like I said, he's a campaign adjacent lobbyist, right?
So what? What's that have to do with the shit?
I still think it's relevant. Someone working alongside Trump's team. But okay, you don't have to think so. Again, I told you we can end there, so I'll
Sam Patton pled guilty. Sam Patton's FARA violation stemmed from his failure to register and lobbying on behalf of the Party of Regions, a Ukrainian political party, from 2014 to 2018.
Okay, so that's when he would have been doing
the false statement charge related to his misrepresentation
Trump,
of a $50,000 inauguration contribution origin. He was sentenced to probation of $5,000 fine. Nothing to do with trying to get information from Russians. It has to do with giving money.
But again, I never focused on the getting information from Russians. You focused on that over and over and over. I never said that was central to my claim. Okay? I never said that was central to mine.
How does it have to do anything with Russia collusion if someone pled guilty who wasn't? I can't even wrap my head around. Let me get this straight. You're like, well, Trump's team did collude with Russia because a guy who didn't work for the campaign failed a FARA violation.
I'm actually not
working with
I'm
Ukrainians.
not saying what I am saying is that by your because that's absolutely misrepresenting me. You're absolutely misrepresenting me. What I'm saying is by your standard of collusion for saying that Hillary Clinton's team colluded, by that standard, I think that multiple cases here would apply, but that's fine.
So by the standard of me saying Hillary's team getting dirt on Trump from Russians, that was disinformation.
Through legal channels, legally.
It doesn't matter. What is it?
Yeah.
How are you telling me what my definition is?
Okay.
Right? What does through legal channels have any fucking thing to do with what my definition is? So
I guess it doesn't because you don't care about the legal channels, right? I care about the legal channels.
It has nothing to do with whether I care about legal channels.
Clearly,
we'll get to you don't even understand what you're saying. I'm talking about what I mean by collusion. They got dirt on Trump from Russians that was disinformation that they used, that they then gave to the FBI, that the FBI then used to illegally spy on Trump's team. Trump's team
and that's your personal definition of collusion. I understand now. Yeah.
Trump's team did not get dirt on Hillary's team. Therefore, that did not affect the 2016 election. Therefore, they did not give it to the FBI. Therefore, the FBI did not use it to illegally spy on Hillary's team. So when it comes to the question of collusion, it's clear. When it comes to Russia collusion, you're like, yeah, but it has to do with legal channels. And so the reason that I think that Trump's team colluded with Russia because they had illegal channels. And one of the ways I can prove it is Sam Patton had illegal channels with Russia to affect the 2016 election. And you're like, one of the ways I can prove it is this. Sam Patton.
No, I just said that. You asked me. No, wait. The reason we get to the Sam Patton thing.
Sam Patton, a guy who did not work for Trump's team.
Don't mute me, asshole.
I'll mute you. A guy who did not work for Trump's team.
The reason we got to the Sam Patton thing is you asked about FARA violations specifically.
Failed to work or failed to register as a foreign lobbyist in his work with Ukrainians, not Russia, which had nothing to do with the 2016 election. So you're proving Russia collusion by saying a guy that didn't work with Trump talked to Ukrainians, nothing to do with the 2016 election.
He worked in the Trump campaign. Absolutely.
Show me. I'll reread again.
He was a lobbyist with the Trump campaign.
Being a lobbyist is irrelevant. You know how many lobbyists there are for Hillary's campaign? So if I could find you one lobbyist.
Yes, and if you show some, okay. Yes,
he did not work for the campaign. He worked
alongside the campaign. So also, Donchenko did not work for the campaign, right?
Right. He was paid by the campaign.
Paid by a company that was paid by the campaign, right?
Yes. Explain to me what the lobbying was that Sam Patton did in the Trump's campaign. Explain to me how he was an employee. Go ahead. You say he was a lobbyist for them. Tell me what that means.
I'm not gonna.
Wait. What do you mean you don't know? You're the one making the declarative statement.
No, because you brought up you asked if anyone. We brought up FARA. Anyone related to Trump who was doing FARA violations? That's why I found that. Okay. Summary of key FARA. That's why I brought it up.
He was not an employee.
I feel like I'm getting pigeonholed over and over and over.
You're not being.
I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to learn stuff, and I feel like you're like you just want to like own me really hard.
You're making fucking stupid arguments. Your argument is.
I don't think so. I think that I'm developing my understanding in real time, and you're criticizing me for it all throughout. Yeah.
Let me repeat.
I think we should probably hear.
Your evidence of Trump's Russia collusion is it has to be something done affecting the 2016 election through Russians with doing illegal channels.
Collusion doesn't have to be through Russia, right?
So you're telling me that in your definition of Russia collusion doesn't have to have
Russia. Not I'm saying you can collude with other. I'm sorry. You can collude with other. You can collude. I mean, yes, Russia collusion can be with people who are not directly, who are like not actually Russian nationals. Yes,
if you would listen. Do you understand why this is so frustrating? You don't fucking listen. You're just so interested in trying to.
I think I'm trying. I think I'm also flustered by the way that you're engaging with me. It's very frustrating, I do think I've been actually following pretty well. I think I've been engaging pretty directly with most of the stuff you said, and I think you're very much like screeching out now about it. But I think I've been following you pretty well. I've been trying to do my best here, and I think I've been developing my understanding of this stuff pretty aptly. I've conceded a couple things at least, but I stand by that. I don't think that at the time during the election, I don't think that this person was a suspected Russian spy.
All right, we'll mute you. So again,
mute me again. And I'll unmute again. I don't
see it. All right. So his argument was that Russia collusion has to be through illegal channels. Right out of the gate, he says, why does it have to be with Russia? Why does Russia collusion have to be with Russia? That's fucking tough. That's a tough one. Yeah, it makes sense. I colluded with my friend to win our mini golf game the other day. Russia collusion, right? Coder, if you'd like to come back, we can finish. Actually, I don't know if I could bring him back. I may have banned him permanently accidentally. I've been incredibly generous dealing with a fucking completely unreasonable person. Russia collusion. He says, well, it has to be illegal. It's illegal. It has to do with the legal channels. Okay, but the only way that it would make sense for Russia collusion is it would have to be someone in Trump's campaign that was colluding with Russia and had illegal back channels with Russia affecting the 2016 election. That would be, even if we have to say this, it had to be illegal channel bullshit, which it doesn't. It has nothing to do with that. Nothing to do with it. But even if I accept that that's part of his precondition, okay, fair enough. That's part of your precondition. And then his proof of that is, okay, I can prove that Trump's team colluded with Russia by having illegal channels to affect the 2016 election. And the way I'm going to prove it is this guy that wasn't on Trump's team didn't properly fail with FARA regarding talks with Ukrainians that weren't about the 2016 election. And when I try to explain that, he's like, now, what? Well, your definition of collusion, is it? And I'm like, here's my definition of collusion. Well, that's stupid definition of collusion. I think I care about the legality. The legalities when I care about the legality. Nonetheless, then you would care about the legality of the central statement, which my claim is Democrats never cared about Russia collusion because they colluded with Russia worse. You're saying, oh, no, but to me, that means only the legality of the channel that they used. I'm like, okay, that's not what they meant, but fine, even if we accept that, there was no illegality of the channel regarding Russia collusion to affect the 2016 election. Show me the crime. He goes through the crimes one after another. Doesn't show it. Then he's forced to say, well, did anybody have any sort of FARA violation connected to the Trump campaign? He Googles or whatever, finds this guy, Sam Patton. Sam Patton didn't work for the Trump campaign. Doesn't matter. He was a lobbyist that was tangentially connected, so that counts. What the fuck are you talking about? Sam Patton wasn't fined for FARA for dealing with Russians. He was fined for dealing with Ukrainians. Sam Patton wasn't fined for Russians or for FARA violations for dealing with the 2016 election or getting information. It had to do with $50,000 payment. It's a damn joke.